FHR committee. I think I have the green light. We are in the process of recording. Correct, gentlemen? Thank you. Supervisors present on behalf of FHR committee are Supervisors Miller, Shakur, Wish, Spencer, and Caprillion, and myself, Chairman Trottier. Nielsen is excused this evening, and the Youth and Governance Skipper is excused, and I'm waiting to hear from Renteria. It is 5:04, and I am going to, this is a joint meeting with Government Services, so I'm going to let the chairperson, Chairman Caprillion, take over.
All right, very good. Thank you for that. I'm going to call this meeting of March 10th, Government Services to order. And it looks like the only excused absence that we have is Supervisor Kelly. But with that, we do have one Youth and Governance representative here, Scout Widener, and I'm going to ask her to read the Youth and Governance statement.
Hello, we are members of the Racine County Youth and Governance Program, and we will be participating in tonight's meeting. This program serves to empower youth in Racine County by encouraging us to participate in local government. We have agreed to abide by the applicable standards of conduct that would govern any elected county board member. While we are encouraged to participate and are allowed to have a non-binding advisory vote on matters before this committee, all formal action taken by this committee will be based solely on the binding votes made by county board supervisors.
Thank you, Youth and Governance Rep Weiner. If you would notice, we have one item on our agenda that's taken up by both committee members or both committees. And with that, this is the consideration of Resolution 2525, and the numbers will be set later, but by both of our committees. And this is for the deputy sheriff positions for the multi-year agreement with the village of Sturtevant. So with that, Supervisor Trottier.
Thank you. Consideration of Resolution 2025-XX by the Finance and Human Resource Committee creating 10 FTE deputy sheriff positions and authorizing the transfer of $1,354,473 within the Sheriff's Office 2026 budget and authorizing a multi-year 2026 to 2030, let me correct that, 2026 to 2030 police service agreement with the village of Sturtevant, requesting action, first reading, March 24th, 2026 at the county board meeting. This evening to make the presentation, I'm going to first introduce Jim Widener.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having us here this evening. So my name is Jim Widener. I'm the Chief Deputy with the Racine County Sheriff's Office. And with me this evening, I have Carrie Madrigal. She is our Operations Division Captain, and also Kelly Getsky. He's our Support Services Division Captain. So tonight, we're here to respectfully request that these two boards vote and move the resolution to the county board. The resolution is for the engagement in a contract to provide law enforcement services to the village of Sturtevant for the term of 5 years. Along with that is the request for adding 10 FTE deputies to the Racine County Sheriff's Office budget to support the service of that Sturtevant contract. So we have been before both of your boards this last quarter of 2025 discussing the development of the conversations with Sturtevant centering around contracting for law enforcement services and actually the implementation, and currently we are in place with a temporary contract. So tonight we are looking to segue off of that temporary contract and move into a full-time long-term contract for law enforcement services with the Sheriff's Office. So just to give a little bit of history on kind of how this process has played out, the conversations first began last July of 2025. The village of Sturtevant representatives had reached out to the Sheriff's Office inquiring about what it looked like to contract for law enforcement services. Information was provided to them based off of our other contracts. Contracting for law enforcement services for the Sheriff's Office is something that goes back multiple decades. We currently have 8 existing municipal contracts that we provide law enforcement services for throughout Racine County. In August of 2025, a presentation was presented to the Village of Sturtevant Board, just with an overview of what it looked like to contract with the Sheriff's Office. Ultimately, at the end of August, early September, Sturtevant made the decision that they were not going to continue on exploring contracting for law enforcement services, and they were going to continue with their current police department and hiring a new chief. Now, in September, late September, early October, that direction changed. Sturtevant then reinitiated communication with us and asked us, advised us that they were interested in exploring long-term contract for law enforcement services. Now, this all occurred right around the time frame of our budget hearings. So during the Sheriff's Office budget hearing on October 15th, in addition to the discussion on the overall budget, we did also make the statement to the board that we had been reapproached by Sturtevant and we were having those conversations with them about what a long-term contract would look like. So once we kind of did that in October, we were initiating in conversations with Sturtevant to see what that contract would look like from a long-term perspective. And then they reached out again to us and advised us that they were at a staffing crisis. And they really could not continue to provide law enforcement services internally any longer. And they asked if, as of November 16th, we would take over providing those law enforcement services. So that was really the catalyst for the discussion about a temporary contract. So again, collaborating with Corp Counsel and Finance and the executive leadership within the county, we put together a temporary contract and brought that to both of these committees and then ultimately to the county board. So on December 9th, that temporary contract was ratified at the county board, and we entered into that contract back billing to the date of November 16th to cover when we first began putting staff out in that area. So we are currently providing staffing right now with the temporary contract. So now that temporary contract did not necessitate any additional manpower to provide it. It was really meant as a stopgap contract to ensure providing those core services to the residents of Sturtevant while we continue to move forward on the long-term contract. So what we were able to do is we're staffing that contract currently with one deputy on overtime on each shift, and we're billing at the top step, overtime step of a deputy. So with that, I will turn it over to Captain Madrigal, just to give a couple comments on how this process has been going. Captain Madrigal, being our operations division, directly oversees all of our operations, all our patrol and investigative assets, including our contracts for law enforcement municipal service, specifically Sturtevant, and she's had a lot of direct communication with the leadership in the village of Sturtevant.
So, hello, good afternoon, board members. So Sturtevant is very happy with everything that we have been doing out there. We do have some stats. I don't know if you want me to bore you with those, but on average, it's about 6 citations a day. We've had quite a few OWI arrests. If you follow the news, you would see that we had a large burglary case that we handled just over a month ago. And they could not have been more happy with how things were handled. Just last Friday, we had an incident at the Real School. You might have seen that on TV or on Facebook. We had officers there within 3 minutes, set up a perimeter. The school was placed on lockdown. Everything was handled meticulously. And the members of the Sturtevant board have personally reached out to me. They are very happy. I would hope Supervisor Hoffman has probably heard some positive feedback as well. And we are also getting a lot of comments sent to our mailbox just at the Racine Sheriff's Office, and people from their neighborhoods just advising it's awesome to see the squads out there. They're very happy with the traffic enforcement that we have been doing, especially on the busy roads, Highway 11, 90th, Wisconsin Street. So overall, it's been a great collaboration that we've made with them. So, so far so good. They are very excited to get the additional staff based on the calls for service and things that we have been tracking since we've been out there middle of November. The requests that they want to have 2 deputies on every shift tracks with the number of calls. So we do feel that that's very appropriate as to what they need. So with that, turn it back over to the chief.
All right, thank you, Carrie.
Mhm.
All right, so tonight, we talked about kind of how we've got here to this point with the temporary contract tonight. We have continued the conversations with both the leadership at the Village of Sturtevant, as well as Corporation Counsel, finance, and executive leadership within the county in the development of this long-term contract. So what we're asking for is a contract to provide law enforcement services to the Village of Sturtevant for the term of 5 years. Now, the necessity for a longer-term contract is really solidified with what we have to do to be able to service that contract. And that's going to necessitate the hiring of 10 additional deputies. So that is a very large investment on behalf of the county and the sheriff's office to be able to provide that service to the residents of the village of Sturtevant. And that's why we're asking for a longer term contract so we can have that level of stability in that municipality. So the contract is to provide full-time service for Sturtevant with 2 deputies, coverage of 2 deputies per shift, first shift, second shift, and third shift. So when we look at the calculation for making a determination, how many deputies do we have to hire to be able to provide that service? So in any operation that's 24/7, 365, you have to look at what's referred to as relief factor. So you can't just hire 2 people and they just work all the time. There's only so many hours of time that any employee can work in a given year. And that number is 1,800 hours for a deputy. So when we look at a 24/7, 365 operation like ours, we work 8-hour shifts, and we also have a 5-2, 5-3 rotating schedule. So all of this goes into play when we are looking at our relief factor. So it basically really just kind of comes down to a math equation. So we know that one deputy can provide 1,800 hours of service to the community. So that's extracting their days off as well as their benefit time. So that's the bare minimum. And then we look at what the service level is that the municipality is asking for. And to Captain Madrigal's comment, having been out there really has given us a good look since November on what their call volume looks like. How often do they have multiple calls going at any one given time? How often are we requesting backup? And the necessity to be self-sufficient within that municipality and not to draw on additional resources unnecessarily. We do feel that the 2 deputies coverage on each shift is appropriate. So that number comes out to 17,520 hours. If you calculate out 48 hours per day for the 2 deputies times 365, and then we divide it by 1,800. And that's really where we get our relief factor. And the number is 9.73. So that's the number of deputies we would need to service the contract. And we can't have 0.73 of a deputy, so we round up the whole bodies as we look at the staffing for this contract, and that's where we come up with the number 10. So that's the rough math on how we kind of get to that and how when we look at this, and then we allocate those 10 deputies over each of the shifts to provide that overlapping coverage and shifts based on our 5-2, 5-3 rotating schedule and accounting for all of their benefit and off time. So as we have gone through this conversation, stretching back to last fall, there's been a couple points of that a lot of questions have kind of like focused in on. And I just would like to address a few of those. So one was that of liability. So when we look at the contracts that we have and really anything having to do with law enforcement, there is a liability line item within our contract. So our contract, if you want to see the numbers, obviously there's the core contract in Appendix A and Appendix B. Appendix B is a spreadsheet, and it very clearly itemizes out each of the costs associated with the contract. And in there is a public liability line item at 2.5% of the overall manpower cost. And that goes to the county to offset the county's liability for public liability. Ultimately, as we move forward and we hire these additional individuals, they are county employees. They are going to be deputy sheriffs. We are responsible for hiring them, training them, managing them. So we do own their liability when they are out in the field. And we mitigate that liability through all those components, right? We're appropriately hiring, being very reasonable, being very thorough in our backgrounds. The training, we value training immensely, right? It's the most critical investment in our largest resource, which is our staff. And then critical and effective management of them. And we do all of those three key pieces to mitigate the overall liability that we have, whether it's in the village of Sturtevant or overall throughout the entire county with all of our operations that are going on. There are certain components within the contract that do call out certain pieces of liability that do belong with Sturtevant or any of our municipal partners that we contract with. So anything that would have to do directly with their ordinances, if there was any type of challenge to the validity of one of their ordinances, they would be ultimately responsible and own the liability associated with that. Anything that would take place that prior to a contract with us, they are ultimately responsible for. Only once we come in do we then, really own or cover that liability. And again, as we move through this, you've heard me state this probably several times already, but the collaboration with Corporation Counsel, with finance, obviously contracts are kind of like the coming together of multiple different areas within county government to be able to deliver this. We are the operational arm to be able to deliver the contract, but obviously Michael Lansdorf from Corporation Counsel, Gwen Zimmer, and Finance being able to come together to ensure that the county's needs are being met from a legal perspective as well as a financial perspective with the development of the contracts. So the second area that I'd like to kind of talk through a little bit is just the cost. So Appendix B. So if you look at your packet in Appendix B, that is the spreadsheet that really lines out all of the costs. It's very transparent. It's laid out very clearly and what the costs are when it comes to providing contract services. So now in there, all of the costs of an individual, their wages down through all of their benefits are called out line by line. Also everything down to mileage on the vehicles that cover fuel, wear and tear on the vehicles, as well as a new line item that we've added in all of our contracts this year, which is an administrative fee. So we've added a 5% administrative fee to all of our contracts. So that scales equitably depending on the contract and the overall size of the contract. And that 5% is really meant to assist in covering additional costs that the county bears when it comes to providing law enforcement services. So as you guys have seen throughout the years, there's more and more equipment, more and more software that kind of comes into play with providing day-to-day operations. And really that 5% offsets those costs that are borne by the sheriff's office to provide the services of the law enforcement coverage in the village of Sturtevant. So really core equipment such as firearms, body armor, first aid supplies, things of that nature, and then software. Specifically the Axon officer program. So being able to cover that and then also allocating dollars aside for direct supervisory coverage are all accounted for within that 5%. So with that, I'll just kind of come back around that our respectful request tonight is to move this resolution to the county board for first and then ultimately second reading. And it is for the approval of the 5-year contract to provide law enforcement services to the village of Sturtevant, as well as the authorization for the hiring of 10 deputies to service that contract. So with that, I thank all of you for your time, and I'll open it up to questions that anyone may have.
Okay, I'll start with Supervisor Wish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you refresh my memory at the peak? What was the staffing for Sturtevant on their own police department?
14.
They had 14 officers or?
That was including the chief, the captain. They had 1 investigator.
Okay. What happens to their equipment?
So internally, their equipment, that it all belongs to the village of Sturtevant. There's actually a line in the contract that states that if there is any equipment as through the dissolving of the police department that they would like to negotiate with us over purchasing or acquiring, that would be a separate conversation with them and a separate contract would have to be entered into for that. I know the reality of it is they have sold off or liquidated a large amount of their equipment that existed with the village of Sturtevant. We did have conversations with them. There really was not a lot of equipment that was necessary for us from an operational standpoint.
So their vehicles are gone?
Yes.
Okay. And without looking at Appendix B, I understand that there's more expenses involved which you covered some of it.
Mhm.
What about vehicles, additional vehicles for the sheriff's department? Because you got now 10 new hires and 2 per shift.
So we are able to accommodate this within our existing fleet. There's 2 vehicles that will be utilized for Sturtevant, and those vehicles will be staged out of the village of Sturtevant. So those deputies that are assigned there will start their shifts and end their shifts from the village of Sturtevant building. And it will require those 2 vehicles. The mileage rate offsets the fuel and then the ultimate upkeep and wear and tear on the vehicles.
Who's maintaining the building?
The village of Sturtevant. The police department is a portion of their municipal building, and they have allocated the use of the existing police department to us.
So you'll be using the facility, but they'll be maintaining it.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Supervisor Preisker?
Thank you, Mrs. Chairman. Supervisor Wish answered some of my questions about the vehicles, but are we keeping Racine County Sheriff branding on these, or are we branding them as a local Sturtevant Police Department?
So what we have done in many of our contract areas, we keep the sheriff's office core branding, but then we also kind of personalize it to that community. So we'll also put their name underneath the sheriff's office logos on the squad car.
Okay. And the mileage clearly covers maintenance and fuel, but does it cover new patrol purchases? I mean, it sounds like at this time we can absorb that with our existing fleet, but I think to Supervisor Wish's point, if we have 10 new FTEs, they're gonna need something to ride in. So is that adequate to purchase new vehicles as these age out? Just the mileage alone?
We'll have, yes, so we were able to absorb the 2 within our existing fleet. It's only those 2 vehicles for those 10 staff members. It'll just be rotating use of those vehicles. And at the end of their life, we have a fleet plan that is constantly rotating and replacing those vehicles each year to maintain where we're at.
Okay, thanks.
Supervisor Horth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chair. Thank you for all the information. I want you to know that the agreement was well written. I did request it, and I had a complete copy to go through, including Appendix B. And so my questions came out. The contract is for 5 years with a potential to increase another 5. Is there an ability for this agreement to, because it's a 2-part question, is there an ability for Sturtevant or the Sheriff's Department to break the agreement or stop the agreement at any given point during the duration?
So the agreement is for 5 years. If they would like to modify and enhance their coverage, we could have collective conversations and then bring that back for if it was going to increase, as far as unless it was mutually agreed upon by both parties to go our separate ways. The term was 5 years, and we needed that term so that we could have stability with the necessity of hiring the 10 individuals to provide the service. We couldn't have a turnover in their board and something would happen, say 2 years out, and then they would change their minds. And then we would be stuck with 10 individuals.
Well, that's where I was going,
Mhm.
because if they decided after 2 years,
Yes.
hey, we'd like to get another go at this, my concern would be, we now have 10 additional officers that, quite frankly, should not be needed at that point. So that's why I was asking if there is any language, or Corporation Counsel, if there needs to be any language that at least protects everybody. Because when I read it, it was not clear to me, which is why I'm asking the question. So that'd
Sure.
be fine, however you'd like to address it, just making sure that we as a county are protected in the event,
Mhm.
probably very remote, but that they should decide they want to give another shot at it.
Could I just comment on one thing, and then if Michael could answer that? Yes, I mean, protecting ourselves was a huge piece. We wanted to make sure that we had locked in for that 5 years. Also with these, and it's in the memo that was a part of the meeting pack, these positions would be sunset directly tied to this contract. They are necessary to provide the services for the village of Sturtevant. If after the 5-year term, if they decided to go a different route and they did not want to continue service with the sheriff's office, we would then, those positions were sunset. We would then reduce those positions through attrition.
Got it. The second part of the question then was, I noticed that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, did you want to, Michael Lansdorf to answer on the 5-year?
Yeah, nothing different than that. I mean, we did make clear what the term of the contract is, it being 5 years. And then to the chief deputy's point, that if they provided notice, there's a date by which they would need to provide that they are planning to create their own police department, but that would only take effect upon the next 5-year term.
If you're comfortable with the language, then that's fine then. The second part then is the rounding off. The total numbers were roughly 1.3 million for the year for an annual agreement with them. This year, that agreement will really only be 9 months. Does that mean it's a prorated number? Or is it in fact going to be the 1.3 less the first 3 months that they've already been paying as a part of the support that you've been giving them?
The temporary contract has been in play up until now. So once this contract would be executed, they are billed on a monthly basis as we move through this. So the overall contract is broken down by month. So they would only be paying for the months that they would receive the core services under the longer term contract. But that being said, we do have a portion in the contract. We understand that if this was approved tomorrow, we don't have 10 deputies sitting right here, that it's going to take time to hire, to train. So there is a clause in the contract that allows us a period of time to hire, train, and to get people up to speed to be able to service that contract. So we did build that into it. So it's 9 months that we will continue to bill at overtime rate to cover. The goal is to hire these individuals as quickly as we can, to make good hires, but to do it as rapidly as we can to get them trained and through the academy and out and providing services to the village of Sturtevant. And as we get to that point, we will transition from covering it with the overtime rates to the standard rates that are in the long-term contract.
I thought that the Appendix A was very supportive and helpful to understand and appreciate the administrative fee consideration. Thank you.
Yes.
Supervisor Shakur, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. In regards to the hiring and the training, didn't we hire some of the the Sturtevant officers to join the police department? Geez, not police department,
Contract.
sheriff's department.
Yes, absolutely. There were several that did apply to us and we did hire that are actually working for us right now. Not all of them. Some went to different municipalities, either in county or out of county. Some just got out of law enforcement in general, but there are several that we did hire.
Several means how many?
We had 3, correct.
How many?
3.
Okay, so we gotta get 5 more.
Well, they
No,
filled positions.
They
that
filled
were-
existing vacancies that we already had within the agency.
Oh.
So we were not authorized to hire anything beyond what our
Okay.
approved budgetary numbers are for our FTE count. This is the ask here for the additional 10 that will service this contract.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Supervisor Brand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe 1 or 2 questions, I don't know. But the vehicle side of things has me puzzled a little bit. And by that, I mean, having those 2 vehicles running 24/7, and if there's any issues with stops and you need extra vehicles there's got to be times where people show up and the vehicle's out on the road, when they come into. So is 2 vehicles enough to cover this? I'm wondering and maybe do you have an extra half vehicle or backup vehicles if something like that happens?
Sure. So yes, we believe 2 vehicles is appropriate for providing that service throughout the community. Although that we understand that there are emergent situations that would occur, or we may need additional squads or if there was some kind of critical malfunction with one of the squads, we have the ability to maneuver within our fleet at any given time. There's a percentage of our vehicles that are either receiving maintenance or they're down because of mechanical failures. So there is an ebb and flow within the fleet, and we have the ability to shift resources around if we need to.
Like basically within your matrices for all your vehicles in the county and how you guys have run this, the way it narrows down is 2 vehicles is adequate because of the backup you have.
Correct.
And the other question, and I may have forgotten it now. Oh, I know what it was. So Did you look back at the history of calls for Sturtevant just beyond the coverage that we've been having? In other words, did you go back 2, 3, 5 years to kind of run some of those numbers? As you mentioned, you're running about 6 citations. Enlighten us on that a little bit if you could.
So when we initially had the conversations with them, we did go back and we utilize our RMS system called Pro Phoenix. We're able to mine data out of there. So we did look at their call volume. We talked to actually, because we had some of their deputies come by us, we kind of asked, kind of like, what was an average day with you, kind of getting a better feel for it. But we did look at multiple years worth of call data so that when we had those conversations with the Sturtevant leadership, they told us, what they would like. And then we wanted to be able to like legitimize and say, okay, this is kind of, based off your data, this is where we feel you should be at. And really that conversation kind of led us to the point where the 2, 2, and 2 from a coverage standpoint. And then to Captain Madrigal's point, being out there since November now, kind of seeing the day-to-day operational flow of everything just reaffirmed kind of where we're at with the 2, 2, and 2. And we feel that that is appropriate.
Thank you.
Supervisor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, how will you determine who is going to work in Sturtevant?
So that will be a picked position. So we have a set process that we go through when we pick positions each year. And it's based on seniority. They'll go through and those positions will be open to be selected.
Okay.
There is one position that we are identifying as a liaison position to the village of Sturtevant. This is a concept that we started a number of years ago with several of our other municipal contracts. And that individual is selected by resume. So we'll do a 30-day posting for that position. Resumes will be submitted. We'll put a panel together that will be combined command staff, as well as the Deputies Association, and we invite the municipality to have somebody sit on there because that really becomes their go-to person. They will work Monday through Friday first shift during the hours where the municipal leadership is there the majority of the time and really becomes their go-to to address any day-to-day issues. That being said, we also have a lieutenant that's assigned. One of his secondary duties is to handle all of our municipal contracts and to liaise with them from a meeting standpoint, communicating with the leadership, as well as providing reports to all of the municipalities on a monthly basis.
Thank you. Could you refresh our memory what the starting deputy salary is under the new contract?
All right. Step 1 is $31.20 an hour, $64,896 annually.
Okay, so
When
I see in your calculation then you're pushing the number more to a more senior position.
so we start
I understand 81.
for our contracts.
Yeah.
All right, step 5.
Yeah,
So we
81.
start the contracts at step 5 for contracts that municipalities that contract for more than one full-time deputy with us. There are multiple municipalities that contract just for a chunk of hours.
Sure.
For those contracts, we bill at top deputy rate.
Thank you. Final question. So we have the 2026 figure. When you determine the 2027 figure, are they obligated to pay that?
Yes, so that's where each year, the costs, they shift and they adjust and they go up every single year for running operations. So Appendix B is adjusted every single year to refresh and reflect all of that year's costs. So we work closely with finance, and in the contract, it states that we have that to them by July, every year to give to them what the expected costs will be. And that's in collaboration with finance. So that's the wage rates, the benefits, all of the rates that are set by the state. And then those are sent over to the municipalities and they utilize those to adjust and to plan for their budget for the following fiscal cycle. So we do reflect what those costs are that we are bearing, and we pass those on to the municipality. And there's a statute that's referenced in the contract multiple times. It's in all of the sections surrounding that. And basically what it states is that the municipality is obligated to pay the costs of what it takes to provide those law enforcement services.
Thank you, Supervisor Miller. Just to note that in the resolution, it does specifically say on lines 40 to 42, total contract costs are reviewed annually and may be adjusted to reflect the actual increases in applicable wages and fringe benefits, administration costs, and mileage. So we are reviewed annually, and I thank you very much for the time and the effort that was put into this. I love the framework that it sets for law enforcement in Sturtevant and throughout Racine County. I think this will send a message to the other municipalities that it may be time to consider consolidation.
Mr. Chairman, may I interject with just one comment regarding
sir.
the language that you read from the
Yes, sir.
resolution? You'll find in the packet was updated with a slightly modified resolution. So the substance of what you just read
It's not
doesn't change, but we wanted to make specific reference to that state statute.
Okay.
So we can make copies available, but it's available on the website as well. You'll find the revised language says that for the purposes of budgeting, the county shall provide to the village the estimated annual contract cost for police services pursuant to a stat 62.13 sub 2G by August 31st preceding the next contract year. So we cleaned that up just to, rather than calling out the specific items which weren't comprehensive, just catch all by making reference to the state statute.
Thank you for the correction or the addition, maybe.
I just have, before I call on a couple of the committee members that we have in line here, I just want to know, are there any special community type policing efforts that Sturtevant was doing that we are not doing any longer?
So I believe they had started a Coffee with a Cop initiative just before all of these conversations had taken place. Right now, we are just providing core services through the utilization of the temporary contract at the overtime rate. So really, it is just going and responding to calls, doing proactive policing. As far as like community engaged initiatives, this is something that we would like to engage in with the village of Sturtevant. And once we enact this longer term contract, we plan on having those more in-depth conversations on how we can engage with the community. And I think the liaison deputy is a key piece to that. That's going to be there Monday through Friday, working with them, making sure that they're available and addressing the needs that come up on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wish.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, you have to excuse my retail background. Is there any room for markup?
So when we look at the contracts, we look at what our costs are and we look to be made whole. We view the contracts as a service that the sheriff's office and the county as a whole provide to the municipalities to be of value, to provide very professional law enforcement services at a very cost-effective rate, but while at the same time being made whole from that municipality. So we do not look at the contracts as a revenue generating item. We look at them as a service that we are in a position to provide the municipalities so that they can provide that quality service to their residents through the contract.
I don't know. Just personally, I think, the county's looking for revenue wherever we can obtain it. Things aren't getting any easier. Budgets are hard to come by to make the budget. You guys get pay increases. That's coming through the county. I don't know if that's something feasible or maybe something somebody should look at and maybe having some kind of ability to come up with more money to finance other projects. That's my thoughts. Thanks.
Could I add, just address one piece of that? I think it's a fair point to make, and it's something that I expect that the sheriff's office will continue to explore. from the legal perspective, one of the things that I would encourage the sheriff's office as they explore some of those possibilities to be mindful of is that state statute that we talked about, where we can charge the county that is providing complete and exclusive police services to a municipality shall provide for the full cost of services. And so this being a multi-year contract, if we sought to, or the sheriff's office sought to mark that up, that exceeded the actual cost of services, the municipality would have a potential argument that we're charging in excess of that actual cost of services, thus providing, and this is unique to a multi-year contract. It wouldn't necessarily be the case for a single year contract, opportunity to potentially, to the question that came up earlier from Supervisor Horace, try to get out earlier on the basis that we're overcharging for the services.
So I guess just one comment to the statement that you made. We understand, we definitely do understand the fiscal position of the county and the increased demand and the increase in costs associated with it. So when it comes to the contracts, we are aware of that, and we're not attempting to make these decisions in a vacuum. We understand the collaborative nature of county government and engaging in conversations with the executive leadership throughout the county. And I know that we will continue to do that and to take a look at the contracts and to ensure that they are, meeting the needs operationally and fiscally and legally of the municipalities that contract with us and the county as a whole.
Okay, Supervisor McReynolds, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chief, would it be possible to execute this contract with existing staff and maybe 5 additional hires rather than going full 10?
No, it would not be. So our current staffing is enough to deliver the services that we currently are providing to the community. So that is a breakdown between area squads as well as other existing contracts that we have. So the ask for the 10 is specifically to service the village of Sturtevant, through kind of going back to that relief factor calculation that I spoke to have the level of coverage that they need in their community. It would require those 10 individuals. If we were to be allocated 5 deputies, what would happen is that we would have to reduce the contract that we would provide to Sturtevant to coverage of 1 deputy each shift, 24/7, 365. That's the standardized relief factor for 1 individual is 5. So we would do that. But based off of our experience now in looking at their prior calls for service, what we would see is that multiple times each day, they have either multiple calls going at the same time and or needing a backup squad to be able to come over to help provide that service. And what we would end up doing would be pulling on the East area squads to routinely come in and out of the village of Sturtevant to either assist with taking those calls or to back our staff up. And we would not receive compensation for those individuals. The area squads have different assignments than the village or the municipal contract squads, where the village contract squads are just to provide those law enforcement services within the village. The area squads have larger geographic areas. All 333 square miles of Racine County are covered by area squads, and they have other roles and responsibilities.
Okay, one more question. How many deputies are assigned to the I-94 corridor right now on per shift?
1.
It's okay.
So we have had to reduce over the years our strategic patrol unit. Obviously, over the last 2 years, we have experienced significant manpower shortage. Now we are on a very solid trajectory, filling a lot of those vacancies. But when staffing becomes lean, the priority becomes core patrol functions and being able to address those core patrol functions. But our strategic patrol unit or our I-94 unit is not what it was, 6 to 8 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Spencer.
Thank you. So a lot of my questions have been answered. I want to kind of bounce off of what Supervisor McReynolds said. The 10 deputies. So where are they? They're used. is there rotation? Or how, like, if they're on, if someone's on vacation and they're needed, but what about when no one's on vacation, no one's on leave, no one's on, how are these 10?
So we have so we run a 5-2-5-3 rotation. So each shift, and it's an 8-hour shift. So what we would look at doing is taking those 10 individuals and we would assign 3 to each shift. And that would cover off group 1, off group 2, and off group 3. Those are overlapping off groups. So when they have off days, there's an overlap between them. So that would cover the 3 on each shift. And then the additional body that we would have would be assigned to first shift, and that would work as the liaison individual that would work Monday through Friday, working with the municipality.
Do you expect overtime?
For normal operations, I think in general, there's always the potential for overtime. Our contracts historically have always covered just the core hours for patrol. So there is not an allocation for overtime within the contracts. We also, with overtime, we always do our best to manage overtime. When we see that we have more involved calls that are going on, having the incoming shifts take those calls versus the shifts at the end of their time frame, end of their shift, to be able to cover that. So there is, we do our best to manage the overtime, but historically, when we talk about the contracts, there is no mechanism for overtime.
So someone who's not positioned in Sturtevant, would someone come in from outlying areas to cover potential overtime situations? Or are these the Sturtevant sheriff's deputies that are?
No, we're still the sheriff's office, so we still have access to all of the resources and the manpower. And every shift of every day, there is the movement of manpower throughout the county to be able to cover the needs. There's an ebb and flow of that, whether it's just covering core areas or there's an emergent situation that's occurring where we have to put more resources into. So you're always, those shift supervisors and the shift commanders are always constantly assessing that and moving resources around to where they're needed. And then if overtime is needed, if we know we're going to have vacancies, whether it's in our core areas or whether it's in a contract area, we have an overtime process that is set forth by our collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, I have one more question. Do you feel we're made whole with this contract?
Yes, I do feel that this year, especially with the addition of the 5% administrative fee, I think when we look at all of the wage rates and everything, it is very transparent. It's very clear. This is exactly what it costs for a deputy. And then I believe that the 5% administrative fee that was established this year does a good job of covering a lot of the core non-personnel costs that are associated with providing law enforcement services.
Chairman Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, when, we're at step 5, what's the rate on step 5? The 2026 rate.
Yeah. Step 5 is $37.75 an hour and $78,520 annually.
And then, I know you and I have had quite a few discussions on this, quite a few hours, actually. And I thank you for that. Can you refresh my memory what the cost of the Axon contract for the 10 additional officers is?
Yes, so for the Axon contract, for the term of it per year to cover the 10 deputies, so it's the Axon officer program, it's $37,591.60 for 10 officer safety plans. And that would be one per new deputy that we would hire. And that over the course of the 5 years, it's $187,598.42 to be able to cover the Axon subscription to provide those officers with body cams, tasers, and all of the software that we talked about at budget time when we approved the new Axon contract. So those costs are over the span of the 5 years. The 5% administrative fee does cover those costs.
And then in the 5% administrative fee, we've taken care of the law enforcement costs. Have we made sure that we're going to have the non-law enforcement services that come with every employee? Obviously, the finance has to do billing and tracking along with HR, and then there's the contract administration. I know when we get grants, we have contract administration. We can add that cost into it. You know, and then, of course, the overtime. But, did we take into account that?
So when we look at that 5% administrative fee, it covers the Axon Officer Plus program. It also covers the core equipment that we issue to deputies, and that's approximately $4,249 per deputy. It covers that, and then it also allocates us approximately 20 hours per month of supervisory time that are split between sergeants and lieutenants for direct supervision, as well as any type of administrative functions that are necessary, such as creating schedules, managing schedules, things of that nature. Now, to the point that you're making is that, yes, does the county have a lot of the infrastructure that's needed, right? There's payroll, there's finance, there's a lot of these things. Now, is everyone allocated a cost associated with it? No, it is not. And this is a part of the ongoing conversations that I had spoke to earlier. We have had conversations, good, robust conversations with a lot of the executive leadership of the county. The goal is to continue to have that ongoing conversation to identify what do we need to do to really look out after the best interests of the county with all of these contracts. And I believe that this will be an ongoing process. If we, at the time we move forward with the Sturtevant contract, this will be our 9th contract. So we have multiple municipalities throughout all of Racine County that are engaging in contract services with us. And those contracts need to be equitable and the same with all of the municipalities. So as we look at what potentially would contracts shift or adjust in the future, we have to be able to take that into account and apply it across the board to all of the municipalities that contract with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Hort?
I'm sorry, maybe just to help clarify, Chairman Kramer, and maybe you can validate this, but in looking at Exhibit A, there are other charges, or I should say other expenses, which are being allocated as a result of the costs associated with this contract. I mean, you've got in the Sheriff's Department, $11,800 in wages that are also going to be a part of the $1.35 million that they're going to be billed. So while there's a 5% administrative fee, that's one item. But there's also some allocation, as I see here, going on as a part of the rest of the operation coming out of the Sheriff's Department. Am I reading that correctly? It's on Exhibit A.
Appendix A?
Yeah, I think it's called Exhibit here, but if you'd like to call it
Sorry.
Appendix, I'm fine with that. It says you have 11,800 or 11,800 and change, and then you've got workers' comp, social security, retirement, all the additional costs associated with the payroll. That's also being allocated. So I think I don't want to say that's a positive, but that speaks to the fact that you are offsetting some of the additional costs of the operation of the Sheriff's Department.
If I may speak on that, my department is the one who wrote the fiscal note for it. So we took the 60,000 and some change administration cost and we allocated out 2 wages, 2 equipment, and 2 software as indicated by the command staff. So I basically just took a percentage of what they anticipated it would cover and applied that to the 60,000.
Yeah,
So
the
we don't have one administration account number. It's gonna hit a couple different areas.
Yeah, the key to me was just sharing that if I read this
Yes.
correctly, the 5% is a fee, boom, that's being charged.
Yes.
And there are other charges also that are being allocated as a part of this contract.
That's not correct. No, it's 5%, which would be allocated to wages, software, and equipment. Those 3 things at the very bottom of the fiscal note equal the $60,000.
So where this reads, give or take, I'm rounding off again, $25,000 in total costs, you're saying that only 11,000 is being allocated to Sturtevant. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure that I'm following what you're reading. The fiscal note that I show here has 33,000 going to wages, 26,000 going to software, and $1,100 going to equipment. Those 3 equal the $60,000 of administration.
Why don't we do this? I'm looking at it
Yeah, Mayor.
and I don't see the fiscal notes.
I
Maybe
do?
we can talk afterwards. I don't think this should stop the conversation. To me, it was something that spoke more favorably towards the Sheriff's Department as it relates to the costs being offset for
Yeah.
this agreement.
Yeah, the fiscal note, just to note, was included in the packet that Nicole Dwyer from my department sent out to the full planning board. If you click on the link, it has all of the materials, including the contract, all the appendixes, all of the
I'm
exhibits.
just reading what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to work with you when the
Let's
meeting
take a look
adjourns.
afterwards then. Thank you.
If I could just add one thing, this is the first year that we've ever added the administrative 5% cost as well. So it is definitely something that we've looked at. No, that's not what I'm looking for. But I'm just saying that we have looked at the equipment and the technology costs, how it has gone up and how can we, recoup some of that. So that's.
Supervisor Wish.
One last question.
One last question.
Yeah, it's just a curiosity. What was the average wage of the police officers in Sturtevant? You know,
I do not know.
would you take a guess?
No.
Less is less than what we make.
Than what you guys are making. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from, can't see your mic. Oh, there it is. Supervisor Rossi. Yeah, I'm like, is it hiding?
Thought that was intentional. Thank you, Chair and Chair. Pull up my notes here. Just a few questions. So overtime of the training period, although the definition of, how much that is a little loose, but that's the only portion of overtime that is paid by the Sturtevant. That is correct. You guys covered this. Wanted to make sure.
Yes, the temporary contract is overtime that each deputy is covered, one per shift right now. As we begin to transition into the full-time contract, it's going to take time to hire and to get deputies out there. So we have a clause that's built in so that up to 9 months, we can continue to charge the overtime rates as necessary to be able to provide the services to the village of Sturtevant until we get those individuals hired and operating on the road.
Thank you. Do you know how many hours of overtime an average deputy works for our department?
No, but we could get back to you. We could pull some overtime data if you're looking at what an average is. I don't know if that's going to give you a real accurate number on what a true average would be. We could probably look at like medians to see where, some of that falls.
But there's a difference also between, I guess, overtime that is a late call. You don't really have a choice. I have a chapter, I have to take someone up to Winnebago. That's not by choice. We have most deputies choose the overtime. So if there's overtime available, they'll sign up for it. So I don't know how you would.
Well, I guess, I'm just doing a quick search and it falls in line with a little bit of the research I was looking at before, but I'm going to go with the very low end and say that, there's 100 hours of overtime. I'm seeing higher numbers than that, but just for the conversation's sake, we're going to say 100 hours of overtime per deputy. That's what I'm seeing is reasonable here. And then if we go with, $100 an hour is the overtime rate, I'm being conservative there because I believe 68 is the base rate. So 68 base rate, go with $100 an hour for overtime. 10 officers with those rates is $100,000, and that doesn't seem to be built into this anywhere. So that our administrative fee is covering wages, or is covering software, equipment, and
Supervisory time.
So there's no accommodation for overtime. So just given a standard year, we'd be underwater $100,000 in overtime if we stick to what my minimums are, and maybe it's less, maybe it's more. I'm just not 100% certain at this point. I'd love to hear some follow-up on that, but that's one big concern I have right now, right off the bat, with a $1.3 million contract being having $100,000 of potential costs here that aren't accounted for as a concern. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. And these are exact conversations that we've had with a number of the executive leadership of the county board, as well as internally within county government. So historically, overtime was never allocated for any of the contracts. It is core services that are being provided that are costed out and is the bill that the municipality pays. Now, it is a conversation that's taking place right now and will continue to take place as we move forward. And I, to the point that Michael made with the statute, looking at holistically what our costs are. But it's not as simple as just providing necessarily like a set rate. We are open to having additional conversations and making sure the county's being made whole with those costs per statute. But as of right now and historically, a lot of these contracts, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily how it has to be moving forward, but there has never been an overtime allocation in any of the contracts that we've had.
Thank you. And I think this speaks to Supervisor Wish's point about if there is a, concern about long-term contracting here and us, potentially having liabilities and overbilling, underbilling, if we're concerned about this item, maybe it does become a yearly, renewable type situation.
The only issue with that though, as I would see it, is there's also language in here that if we don't cover the number of hours or if we don't put on the number of miles for that municipality, at the end of the year, we have to write them a check. So like I closely monitor, to make sure that we're getting all the hours in. Now, there's also, on the opposite end of that statement is if there was no late calls in Sturtevant, there'd be no overtime. Right? Correct?
Well,
Right?
yes.
20, every day of the year, but if there's no late calls, that doesn't, we wouldn't charge them anything. Correct?
If an officer calls in sick, is there never the situation where another officer fills that position at overtime rates?
Not necessarily.
But yeah,
If I
not
have extra
necessarily,
staff on, I can put somebody over there at straight time.
but it can happen.
You can,
So then there is a situation outside of what you just
but
defined.
that's an if. All of that is unknown. I mean, I don't foresee where you could put something into the contract in the beginning of it versus looking back afterwards. I mean, like Elmwood Park, we have a contract with you guys. Should we be allowed to, if we have late calls in Elmwood Park, should we be able to go back and charge for the overtime rates in which, I'm just playing devil's advocate because
Yeah.
I'm like, you have already done your budget, so now are we allowed to come back and charge later?
I understand, but to avoid a conflict of interest from me trying to represent the county and then also trying to
I'm
represent
just
Elmwood
making an
Park.
example.
I'm gonna
I
avoid,
apologize, I could have done it for Waterford.
no, I'm just gonna avoid answering that one for now because there is a direct conflict for me
Yes.
on that specific situation. But my point being here is that there is a situation, a very realistic situation where there's gonna be overtime on this, and I think that needs to be addressed. Any other comments or others? I'll proceed. Thank you. I would like to discuss we're looking at putting on 10 officers, and I know this is a sore subject and it is frustrating for a lot of people, but the Waterford officers and then the Foxconn officers, I keep looking at our population has not increased, and I can only take, others' comments on the law enforcement side for what it takes for policing. I have no concept. I really don't. I'm not a cop. But, we look at those totals and, I'm just trying to understand, was policing ineffective prior to getting those officers? Because now they're being gifted or they're being explained to us as that was right sizing. And I'm looking at this as an opportunity to use some of those officers and not hire 10 new officers for the county to satisfy the Sturtevant contract. Any comments on that? Was there a severe issue before the Foxconn officers came on?
Yes, so the Foxconn, and I know this has come up multiple times throughout the years at budget time. The Foxconn addition of that staffing was to really right-size us and to be able to meet the needs of the community at that point in time. The Waterford contract that you speak to, so they had 5 individuals. So when that contract went away, those 5 individuals, and that was a discussion between the sheriff and then county executive, was to bring those individuals back in, and they were assigned to our SPU unit that we had touched on before. Now, over time, we've lost 3 deputies, so that's 3 of the 5. We have also we have a contract where we have an SRO in Union Grove High School, we did that without the addition of any additional manpower. So that's the fourth individual. And the fifth individual was in the build out for the YDCC for juvenile detention. There initially was an individual that was assigned there as security. And that is the fifth individual. Now, since then, we experienced shortages in our courts division, and we have that individual now kind of goes back and forth between those two facilities. So when we talk about the 5 individuals that came back to the sheriff's office when the Waterford contract dissolved, that's where those 5 went. And for currently, we have a Waterford contract. We have a small portion of third shift that we provide coverage for that we didn't have any additional manpower allocated for.
That actually does explain those well. What about the Foxconn officers then?
That got us just to right size
Okay,
to address the needs of the community at that time.
the needs of the community at that time when it's tied to new project or new development. So then if the Foxconn development happened, you'd say that we would be inadequate in policing?
I would say that it would have to be readdressed, the staffing levels, if that would have come to fruition.
Okay. I find that interesting as I talked to people that were on the board at the time, and that was surely billed as, anticipation for the Foxconn development. So I wasn't here, so I just want to note that there's a little bit of a conflict in what I'm being told from people that were here then and what I'm hearing now. So there's really not much to discuss on that. Just want to note the conflict. Lastly, I would like to talk about the 5% administrative fee. And liability, we do have some insurance items listed in the line items for employee coverage, but I'm just talking about the general liabilities for the county in picking up this contract, and there's civil liabilities that get picked up. And 5%, when I was looking at other counties, and maybe you could help me if I could see some other contract that was comparable, but I didn't see anything below 10% and up to 22% when urban areas came into coverage for a comparable administrative fee. And Chief Deputy Widener, you and I talked about this. One of the most important things for me was seeing this number increased. And I don't expect you to guess or try and understand what Mount Pleasant was looking at, but I would like to call it the difference in contract value. There's a $450,000 difference between what the county is proposing and what Mount Pleasant was proposing. Obviously, the county was the low bidder, and Mount Pleasant was looking at doing this with 7 officers. So there's a big variance there. And to someone like myself, when I see variance in bidding, there's a difference in scope, difference in service provided. But numbers like this 5%, when I'm seeing minimum 10% in other contracts, brings me concern. Is there any thoughts right now to looking at increasing this percentage, especially when the approval rests on this board's approval?
So the 5%, when we looked at that, we felt that collectively within the sheriff's office, ultimately it was determined that the 5% was going to be implemented across the board with all of the municipal contracts. So again, those contracts all need to be kept in alignment. The 5%, I feel, is a very positive mechanism for us to be able to cover the increasing costs that we're seeing, especially in the non-manpower related areas. And going back to the point that we need to continue to have this conversation, make sure that we're looking at, as we advance through the years, what those costs look like. And then if that needs to be increased to be able to cover those costs, I think the mechanism is in place to be able to do that.
All right, thank you. And I had one last quick thing. One more item of concern for me is that county agrees to provide additional officers for special events, 4th of July, any other large events that they would have. So you should think that would increase to, maybe 5, 7 officers in any active event.
Potentially. So this is something that we currently do at no cost to municipalities across the county. When they have, if it's a pre-planned special event, whether it's 4th of July or whether it's fireworks, even when Sturtevant had their own police department, we were providing manpower through mutual aid at no cost to them. So really shifting gears, and now that they're going to contract with us, turning around and giving them a bill for something we have done and we do for every other municipality if they ask for us. And this is where part of these contracts, there's kind of an intersection between the roles and responsibilities of the sheriff countywide and the resources that we provide at no cost to every municipality, and then also contracting with us for core law enforcement services, just the day-to-day operations. Because when there is something that is large scale, that's above and beyond, whether it's a more involved investigation, or, I mean, for example, like the real school situation that occurred just recently. If Sturtevant existed at that point in time, there's a very high probability they would have contacted us and asked us for additional resources or assistance, and we would not have sent them a bill for any of it. We would have done everything that we did now currently at no cost. There was a situation a couple weeks ago out on the West End where a municipality asked us for assistance. We sent multiple resources out there from our SWAT team, negotiators, UAVs, everything, and our incident management team, and they brought resolution to the situation. And there was a high cost with it, but this is a role and responsibility of the sheriff's office to assist throughout the county, and there is no bill that is given to any municipality.
I accept that and understand. Thank you very much. I would just like to see if you can then, the one follow-up item, that overtime data per officer or deputy.
Yes, we will
Thank
follow
you.
up with you.
Thank you. Chairman Kramer.
Thank you. I forgot just a couple of questions here. I know we were down about 17 deputies at the beginning of 2025. And you've done a remarkable job bringing the staff up, to the level you have on the hiring process. How long is it gonna take, do you believe, for the 10 deputies to be hired?
So we have made significant progress in the recruitment. We've always been very strong in retention of our deputies, and we really have closed the gap. We're at 5 vacancies right now. We have interviews with 5 lateral transfers on Friday. So there's a very good possibility that we could walk away with 5 additional conditional offers for those 5 vacancies. So we are sitting very well from a staffing perspective. Now, hiring 10 individuals is a big undertaking. And really, that's where Captain Getsky comes in our support services division, working very closely with HR, as well as our performance and data analytics department, really implementing. We've been working on a more robust recruitment initiatives and really expanding out beyond just our region, and pushing a very active recruitment to fill those positions. So we're going to do everything we can. I can't exactly put a time frame on it. Obviously, based on the contract, we would like to get those individuals hired, and we want to get them trained and up and running prior to the 9 months, so that we can get them in place with the Village of Sturtevant.
Okay, and then is it a possibility, because there's been some concern about tracking late calls for just those deputies that are assigned to Sturtevant?
Yes.
So we do have some hard data.
So
when we go back in 27 and say, look, everybody gets bad at the end of shift, and we have to go out and spend 2 hours every day. I'm sure that's not what happens.
Yes.
Because nobody want to work 10-hour days, but that we can do that, and then come back and we'll have some data that we say to Sturtevant, look, here's the problem.
So yes, so based on our conversations, we did have internal conversations about putting some mechanisms into place to be able to assist with tracking that data specifically for Sturtevant to kind of really get a full picture of everything that's going on there. Again, historically, like one of the issues with kind of getting granular with some of our data is just limitations on our software for tracking our time and overtime. So we do kind of supplement that with hand counting and going through it. But yes, we absolutely will with this contract to get a fuller, more accurate picture of the true utilization of overtime.
And this is something, I guess the staffing levels, how do we determine not necessarily the 10 officers, because that's just a mathematical calculation, but we have, so many deputies on the road. And how do we determine how many deputies we need on the road? You get how much staff we need.
Sure. So we look at our areas. So when we look at our patrol assets, we have area squads, which are just general sheriff's office roles and responsibilities. They're larger geographic areas. We have a total of 9 areas that deputies are assigned to every day, every shift. And then we have our contract areas. And those are the municipal contracts for direct service to those municipalities. And we currently have 8 contracts. So there's deputies that are assigned specifically to those areas. So looking at those roles and assignments, that's how we staff our patrol deputies. And then obviously we have criminal investigations. We have other ancillary areas where deputies play roles that are separate from just
And
the
then
core patrol
how do we
function.
determine the staffing of the sergeants and the lieutenants that, and then how much staffing we need for, you know,
Sure.
administration?
Yeah, so for our direct patrol supervision, we have 3 sergeants on each shift, 1 per off group. They are responsible for their off group, and they're the rotating 3 off groups. There's 3 sergeants on each shift, and there's 1 lieutenant that commands the shift. So we have the 3 core shifts. Carrie is the division captain, but also underneath Captain Madrigal, there is also investigations. So we have a lieutenant that runs investigations. We have 2 sergeants that fall subordinate to him. 1 runs general criminal investigations, 1 runs our Metro Drug Unit, and our other specialized task force officers that work within investigations. We do have some administrative supervision that assist with non-direct law enforcement functions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And now Supervisor Pysker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I share some of the concerns the other supervisors have about making sure that the county is, you know, fairly recouping our costs for some of the administrative overhead and the increasing costs of technology and subscriptions that maybe we didn't have 10 or 20 years ago, and the overtime. But I just want to make sure I understand this right. So we're billing at basically the highest deputy rate of step 5, but the people that fill the role may not necessarily be there. So if they come in at the step 1, which is at close to 65,000, we could be charging basically 13,600 and something more per deputy, which could give us basically a surplus relative to our cost of about 136,000. And then the 5% administrative fee is another 68,000. So, you know, we could be 100,000 down because of overtime that we're not charging for, but we could basically be up 204 with the administrative fee and charging more for the deputies at the regular rate. But that said, if Chairman Kramer is right and the technology subscription is about 4,000 per deputy, for the 10, that's 40,000 of the 68 in the administrative fee. So that's eating up almost all the administrative fees. So then there's not really that much more for some of the other administrative overhead like HR and finance director time and the supervision time. So I agree with Supervisor Rossi that, you know, I don't know what the number is, but maybe it's something bigger than 5, and maybe it does need to be bigger than 5 across the board, especially when the technology part is eating up like 60% of the administrative fee. Granted that it's brand new, and I appreciate we have it at all. But, and maybe we do account for something for overtime. So if the average is 100 hours, we can't guarantee or predict what it's going to be, but maybe we charge a rate that's like half of what the average has been. So we're at least acknowledging that there's going to be some inevitable overtime, even if it's just, you know, staying late on an existing shift, not scheduled and planned overtime that was chosen, just to make sure we're covering our costs. And that could always be adjusted in future contracts.
Yeah, so absolutely, I do, and I do. We do hear everything that the members of the board are communicating to us with the costs. The goal is to provide a quality service and to make sure that the county is made whole. So we want to be able to continue to do that. We will continue to engage in conversations moving forward and looking at the data and finding way. And we have the framework to be able to address this as it moves forward, as we have costs that escalate each year, and to make sure that we can build that in.
Good to go? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to throw something off the wall. Okay. Going back to Supervisor Rossi's question about overtime, and I've been on this board long enough to know and hear the story every year about overtime with the sheriff's department and how you can't budget it and all that other good stuff. But I'm wondering if you came up with an average or an amount, whatever you thought was fair, let's say in this contract, which you may or may not be able to do now anyway. But let's say you came, this is what we expect. This is what we think it's going to be. Build that into the contract, it's going to be. Build that into the contract and say, if it doesn't reach that, we're going to rebate and say, if it doesn't reach that, we're going to rebate you. Is that a possibility?
Potentially. And I think this will be part of the ongoing conversation centering around all of our contracts.
Yeah.
Right. I think the biggest piece is that, from a very high level strategic view, right? This is a quality service. We feel we provide quality law enforcement services as a sheriff's office. We want to be able to provide that resource to the communities. And at the same time, we want to make sure that the county is made whole. So we definitely are open. We've engaged with these conversations, and the conversations during that were that this needs to continue, and we'll continue to have those conversations. And the way that the contract is formatted and laid out, there is the mechanism in place to be able to address those cost escalations and, as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor or Chairman Kramer.
Just a correction on, for Supervisor Pritzker, there's seven steps. So we're not at the top. Just, yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Brand.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier that there is, if you don't have enough time on the road, there is some clawback from Sturtevant or rebate dollars going back. In talk of this overtime, is there the potential to, build in a percentage, whether it's 3, 5, 10% of the contracted amount to go towards overtime if there is overage? In other words, I guess if at the end of 26, the contracted amount is $5,000 over this because of overtime, could something like that be added to the contract?
I think that's the goal of having these continued conversations, to find ways to be able to address that, working with our partners in Corp Counsel and finance, and within the framework of the contract to be able to address those issues.
All right, thank you. So government services, what we have this evening and hearing the discussion, if we feel comfortable with the resolution presented as is, or, if we decide to move forward, making any recommendations to, do any adjustments, that can be as well. But this is this is a movable item. I will ask if there's any more questions or discussion on this item before calling for a motion. Does anyone feel comfortable at government services? What we're going to do is, just for our committee, we're going to vote on the resolution. The fiscal piece will come from a motion from the finance committee. Youth and governance, do you have anything? Okay, very good. All right, committee members, this is actionable. So is there anyone comfortable with making a motion this evening?
I will motion to approve.
All right, we have Vice Chairman looking to, made a motion to approve as is.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned and properly seconded. Is there any other further discussion? All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. I'm going to first ask youth and governance. How do you wish to vote?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Now government services. All those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Is there any opposed from government services? One opposed. That would be Coleman. All right, thank you. The motion does pass now, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I
Chairman,
Supervisor Miller.
for the Finance Committee, I would move to send this to the County Board for first reading tonight with the fiscal note.
I have a first and I have a second.
Mr. Chairman, can I interject?
Yes, sir.
On the agenda, it reflects that the first reading would be March 24th, I believe, and I believe that's what was discussed earlier.
Yes.
Yes.
I amend my motion.
Thank you. I made that clear at the beginning of the committee meeting. It was the 24th and not the it's listed.
And to be clear, Mr. Chairman, that's something that could be subject to change if that's the desire of the committee. The intention was really just recognizing the import of this item to afford additional time for the consideration of it.
Great. Thank you for the corrections. Thank you for the additions. Any last minute discussions about the fiscal note? Okay, I have no youth and governance representative present. So committee, all in favor? Any opposed? This is approved for the fiscal note. The actual contract was approved at a prior finance FHR meeting. So this will go first reading on the, what was that date? The
24th.
24th, thank you, of March.
With that, we have exhausted the agenda for government services, so I call the meeting closed.
And I will also call the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Just need a deputy. Just need a. Good evening. I'm going to be calling the Racine County Board meeting to order. If the clerk could call the roll.
Supervisors Kelly and Meyer are excused, and Supervisor Wishaw is actually on virtually. So if our IT team could promote him to panelist. Then everyone else is here in the chambers.
Can you hear us, Supervisor Wishaw? Can you hear us, Supervisor Wishaw?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
*6 will unmute you, Supervisor Wishaw, if that helps.
Say again?
Now we hear you.
Thank you. I hear you, Mr. Supervisor. Wishaw.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, as it's customary, one of our supervisors leads us in an opening prayer. And tonight Supervisor Horst from Waterford will be leading.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Almighty God, we come before you today with gratitude for the opportunity to serve our community. We ask for your wisdom to guide our decisions, your clarity to help us in the need of understanding our people, and your strength to act with integrity and fairness. May our discussions be respectful, our actions must be, and our hearts be unified in our pursuit of a common good for our community. Bless this meeting, and may our work today bring peace, progress, and hope to all that we serve. And let's also include all of our service representatives over in the Middle East and throughout the world that are currently engaged in some situations that are not so comfortable. Thank you again for all of your holy blessings. Amen.
And now the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4, public comments. Pursuant to section 2-71 of the Racine County Court of Ordinances, each speaker is allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. Do we have any public comments?
I don't believe we have any public comments.
Are there anybody in the public that wants to make a comment out in the gallery? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5. Reading of the minutes of the previous meeting, which is automatically waived unless requested by a majority of the members present. Seeing no objections. Item number 6, resolutions and ordinances referred to committee.
Resolution number 2025-85 by individual supervisors requesting that the entire causeway leading to Racine County's Harbor Park adopt the name of Kippie Causeway was referred to the Public Works, Parks, and Facilities Committee.
Supervisor Hopkins, I believe you're taking that up on Thursday night? Okay, so. Thank you. Item number 7, introduction of resolutions and ordinance for first reading and referral.
Resolution number 2025-92 by Finance and Human Resources Committee authorizing a 5-year agreement from 2026 through 2030 with Unisolutions for budget procurement software for a total of $411,301 and transfer within the 2026 budget. Resolution number 2025-93 by Finance and Human Resources Committee authorizing and adopting a debt management policy to direct the use, management, and reporting of Racine County's debt financings. And resolution number 2025-94 by Finance and Human Resources Committee authorizing modifications to the compensation structures and classifications for non-represented Racine County employees.
Supervisor Trotter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The FHR committee is requesting from the board unanimous consent this evening for first and second reading for resolution 2025-94 '95-92.
Okay. Item number 8, communications and claims.
Number 1, Racine County Facilities Management Notable Project Status Report for the month of February 2026.
Referred to Public Works, Parks and Facilities Committee.
Number 2, application of American Transmission Company LLC as an electric public utility for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to construct and operate the Elm Road Racine Transmission Line project consisting of a new 345 kV transmission line located primarily in the city of Oak Creek, Milwaukee County, the city of Racine, and the villages of Mount Pleasant and Caledonia, Racine County, Wisconsin, from the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. Number 3, resolution regarding an amended relocation order of the Village of Caledonia affecting property along the Turtle Creek between Middle Road and the Klima Ditch as part of the Turtle Creek Restoration Project in Section 17, Range 23 in the Village of Caledonia, Racine County, Wisconsin, from the Village of Caledonia. Number 4, resolution requesting Wisconsin Counties Association lobby state legislature and governor on legislation for greater local control for Wisconsin counties related to renewable energy from St. Croix County. Number 5, resolution for support of battery stewardship bill AB 713 and SB 702 from Winnebago County. And number 6, resolution supporting disaster assistance legislation AB 580 and AB 581, SB 557 from Winnebago County.
Items numbers 2 through 6 are referred to the Economic Development and Land Use Planning Committee.
Number 7, resolutions from Trempealeau County, St. Croix County, and Door County supporting Wisconsin establishing a membership with the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, known as MS-ISAC.
Item number 7 is referred to the Finance and Human Resource Committee.
Numbers 8 and number 9 are foreclosures of mortgage, and numbers 10 through 34 are notifications from United States Bankruptcy Court.
And items 8 through 34 are referred to the Finance and Human Resource Committee and Corporation Council.
Supervisor Wish.
Copy number 3, please.
Supervisor Horth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Items number 1 through 6, please.
Any other requests? Supervisor Kolb.
2, 3, and 4, please.
Supervisor Spencer.
Thank you. I'd like a copy number 5.
Supervisor Trotter.
Number 7, please, Mr. Chairman.
And if I could have 4, 5, and 6. Any further requests? Seeing none, we're going to continue. Communications from the county executive.
Report number 2025-64 by County Executive making a reappointment to the Housing Authority of Racine County.
Health and Human Development.
Report number 2025-65 by County Executive making an appointment and reappointment to the Commission on Aging and the Aging and Disability Resource Center Board.
Health and Human Development.
Report number 2025-66 by County Executive making reappointments to the Racine County Human Services Board.
That would be the Health and Human Development.
And report number 2025-71 by County Executive making reappointments to the Golf Course Improvement Committee.
And that would be Public Works. Item number 10, standing committee reports containing recommendations on items referred.
There are no reports.
Second reading of resolutions and ordinances.
We have none on tonight's agenda under majority vote. So under 2/3 majority vote, we have resolution number 2025-90 by Finance and Human Resources Committee establishing the total annual compensation of the clerk of courts and county sheriff for the years 2027, 2028, 2029, and 2030. And resolution number 2025-91 by Finance and Human Resources Committee authorizing a 3-year agreement from 2026 through 2029 with Spectrum for internet services for the Racine Racine Public Health Division for a total of $18,000.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Supervisor Pritzker.
Mr. Chairman, can we have special consideration for item 2025-90?
And there'll be special consideration for that item. Supervisor Trotter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to Resolution 2025-67, This was approved by the FHR Committee concerning the Sheriff's Office and Clerk of Courts of Racine County receiving annual compensation for 2027, 2028, 2029, and 2030 at a 2.5%, 2.5%, 3%, and a 3% annual raise. State law requires counties to set an annual salary for the next 4 years for these positions prior to the individual pulling papers to run for the offices. The 2026 base salary for the sheriff currently is at $122,545. 27 at 2.5% would be $125,609. 28 at 2.5% would be $128,749. 29 at 3% would be $132,611. In 2030, 3% would be $136,590. Now, the clerk of courts current base is $96,162. At 2.5%, it would calculate to $98,566 for 2027. 2028 at 2.5%, $101,030. In 2029 at 3%, $104,061. And in 2030 at 3%, $107,183. The percentages are in line with individuals in these public positions. I'm gonna then leave this up to the chairman to leave it up for discussion.
Okay, so on your podiums, we also have 2 S resolutions. So we're gonna start we're gonna start with Supervisor Pritzker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So fellow supervisors, I asked the clerk to send to you some information I got from both Waukesha County and Walworth County. The comparisons that they put together for sheriff's compensation and what they're proposing for 2027, 28, 29, and 30. I also handed out before the meeting today just a one-page sheet with some of the rationale for the substitute resolution that I'll propose tonight. When I looked at the numbers initially,
Could you make a motion to?
Sure, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to replace what resolution 2590 with 2590S.
And why don't we make that S1?
Sure, S1, which basically changes the salary effective at 1/1/27.
Do we have a second before we go any further?
Got it.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Now go ahead, Chair.
Thanks. What this effectively does is makes a market value adjustment for 2027 to 145,000 and then escalates that the same as what was recommended before. So escalates it by 2.5%, 3 and 3. When I first saw the proposed numbers, the 125,609 seems to be an increase of 3% from the prior year, which was basically approved as Supervisor Chairman Trotter mentioned before, the prior 4-year time period. And that would be fine if that period was a fair market rate or comparable to the other large counties in the state and our adjacent counties. So that was what I looked at. When I first saw the number, I didn't know if it was really a fair market rate or not. So I reached out to some of the neighboring counties. Milwaukee County did not respond. Kenosha County, we know what their number is because they set their number in their budget. So they're not doing it in the meetings, preceding the deadline like many of the other counties are. And what the information I was able to get from them was forwarded to you, as I mentioned. So depending on how you look at it, Racine County's salary, we're the 5th largest county. So in my mind, we share some of the complexities in public safety as some of those other large counties have. We also share them with our neighbors. So the crime doesn't stop at the imaginary borders with Milwaukee County or Waukesha County or Walworth County, even though we may consider Walworth County, Waukesha County and Milwaukee to be much bigger than we are. And they are, right? Milwaukee is the #1 ranked by population in the state, and Waukesha is 3. Kenosha is 8 and Walworth is 15. So I would expect a fair market rate for us would be to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5, right? Maybe 5 to 8 or so. But as we currently stand, we're ranked 12th or 14th. It's 12th. Walworth County throws out Dane and Milwaukee County, so we're ranked more favorably there as 12th. But Waukesha County includes Dane and Milwaukee because they're #3, so they're comparing themselves to #1 and 2, Milwaukee and Dane. And in that ranking, basically, we're ranked 14th. We're ranked 14th in terms of pay. So I guess the question I have for the board is, do we think that as the 5th largest county, being ranked 14th in the state by pay is fair? Do we want to be ranked last in pay of our region? So compared to our adjacent and neighboring counties, Milwaukee, Walworth, Waukesha, and Kenosha, do we want to be dead last? We talked a lot about the last 2 years of budget processes, how the sheriff's department controls such a massive amount of our budget on the whole, and a massive amount of the part that is paid for directly by property taxes and not other sources of revenue. There's a staff of about 300. I think there are complexities that our county has that maybe outstate counties don't have, like being part of the 94 corridor between Milwaukee and Chicago. And the sheriff's department has reported on some of the things they do there. I know they're down patrols. Also complexities of managing Lake Michigan, which is something that not all counties have to do. And then, as we discussed earlier tonight, the expanding role of the sheriff's department as more and more underlying municipalities decide to disband their local departments, and the sheriff's department has to take up that slack. So when I was trying to figure out what a market rate was, I looked at it from basically 3 different angles. You know, where do we rank statewide in descending order? Where do we rank compared to other counties of our size? And then how do we compare to our adjacent counties? And as it says there, we're 14th overall. We're 12th among counties over 100,000. So there are some smaller counties that pay more than us. There's 7 smaller counties that currently pay higher than Racine County, and those are listed here: Rock, La Crosse, Washington, Ozaukee, Eau Claire, Winnebago, and Kenosha. For 2027, I think they still have to vote on it, but Waukesha is proposing $145,683, and that is in the spreadsheet that I sent all of you, the more colorful one. Walworth is my handwritten notes on there because I received a call back from the HR director there, Kate Bishop, and she said that they are proposing for 2027 also 145, but 565,000. So both are basically in the 145,000 range. The other thing I looked at is, do we want people to advance and promote from within the department? It's my understanding that most of our prior sheriffs have basically grown up through the sheriff's department, either as investigators. And while that doesn't have to be the case, I think that the community wouldn't mind that being the case, that would be a natural thing for someone to do. And the current proposal of 125 would put the pay of the sheriff below many of the subordinate staff in the department. Not the chief deputy. You know, I understand there's an exception for the chief deputy. They're like the head non-elected person, but it would put the pay below the current captain. I think below many of the other proposed positions that I think that are still being negotiated. And then also keep in mind that some of those are also overtime eligible. So even if the base pay may be in line with overtime, they would also make more than the sheriff. So 145 is a one-time increase compared to last year. It wouldn't be an increase by that much if we were currently ranked around 5th, which would put the pay of the sheriff around 135,000 currently, as opposed to the 122 where it is. So yes, the fiscal note seems obnoxious when it's an increase of almost 19% in 1 year, but it wouldn't be increasing that much if we were at a fair market rate for the last 4 years or 8 years or 16 years, and we have not been. If we increase it to 145,000 as I proposed, Racine would rank around 5th or 8th overall in the state for 2027. We'd still be behind Dane, Rock, Waukesha, and Walworth, possibly Milwaukee, La Crosse, and Washington, depending on their 2027 approvals. And we would still only be third or fourth among the 5 southeastern counties that we border. So we'd for sure be behind Waukesha and Walworth. They're both proposing over 145,000, possibly Milwaukee, presuming that they're going to be in that range. So I guess the question is, do we want the person controlling about 66% of our budget to be the lowest paid in the region? Does it make sense to be lower than lower population neighbors like Kenosha and Walworth County? Do we want to be behind 7 smaller counties? And do we think that's a fair market rate for the complexity of the job that we're asking our sheriff to do? And do we want to discourage internal advancement? So who would want to take a pay cut to take on the extra scrutiny of being an elected official and running the department for less pay?
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Supervisor Horth? Get your light on? No? Any other comments? Supervisor Kolb?
Just a quick question, because I know that, when does, somebody have to commit to run for the sheriff? Was that done already?
No. If Corp Counsel wants to answer that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The nomination papers, which is the triggering event for the deadline, may be circulated no sooner than April 15th preceding the general election. So with regard to the clerk of courts and the county sheriff, the earliest that nomination papers may be circulated is April 15th. So April 15th effectively serves as the deadline by which the salary needs to be set for that next term.
But I'm saying, so anybody that had to go out and get signatures, they don't have to start doing that until April 15th?
Yes.
Okay, so this isn't like people already went and got signatures to run for sheriff, and now we're changing the salary.
I can't speak to what people may or may not have done. The state law is clear, though, that nomination papers may be circulated no sooner than April 15th.
Okay.
Supervisor McReynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have, great concern with this proposal. And some of the bullet points that was presented to us. We've got a sheriff currently that has been in office for 16 years. And the current salary is 122 and change. And one of the bullet points was, do we want the person controlling 66% of our budget to be the lowest paid in the region? Our current sheriff, again, has been in office for 16 years and has done a good job in getting everything and plus what the sheriff's department has wanted. And to take that step to 145 for somebody coming into elected office for the first time, I think is just way too big of an increase. I would support a small increase, but nothing near 145. I just don't think that makes any sense. I don't think it's fiscally responsible to our taxpayers to take that position to that pay grade.
Supervisor Wish?
We can't afford it. That's the bottom line. I appreciate all the work Supervisor Priska did with all those facts and figures, but this is not the resolution that was approved by the Finance Committee. There were discussions about that. There was actually a proposal to go lower on the percentage increase, which we vetoed or voted down. And I agree. In the years I've been on the board, I don't understand why the sheriff is here and the operations manager, the chief deputy is there, and you got captains there. It made no sense to me. I mean, that's not the way it works anywhere else in the real world. but it is the facts that we're dealing with. We just can't afford it as a county right now to escalate the political position of sheriff to that level. You know, even though you compare it to other counties, I can't agree to that. I still go with the resolution that we passed in the finance committee. I think that's at this point fair and equitable. You got a chief deputy who runs the operation. You know, the sheriff is basically a political position that gets a lot of the credit, but doesn't do a lot of the nitty gritty work. So that's my feeling on it. I'd like to stick to the original resolution. Thank you.
Supervisor Rossi.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you Supervisor Preisker for all the effort you put into this and the other comments from other supervisors. I would like to point out one difference. We're talking about the pay of the sheriff versus the pay of other management or control. What is the term for
Director? Constitutional offer.
the higher end staff and the sheriff's, all the other command staff. Thank you. But we're comparing that to the other command staff. And one difference about the command staff and the sheriff is that the command staff can work in another county. The sheriff needs to live in the county that he intends to run for that office. And one thing I like about a position that doesn't necessarily pay the best is you're going to get someone who really wants to do the job. There's a lot of people in this room who are doing their job as supervisors, not because we're making a fortune, because we are here because we care about representing our constituents. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think that should apply to this position more than any other position. The sheriff is a critical role for the county. And I wouldn't want someone to really be taking that position just because they feel that it's good pay for what they're trying to do, as I wouldn't want our positions to be that either. I would like to point out that some of the comparison counties have excellent financial positions, maybe one or two that could be questionable, or they have massive urban areas. We're comparing Dane County and Milwaukee County to Racine County, when we should look more towards, and I will say this about Walworth. I mean, their financial position is excellent. They don't even have debt. They buy everything with cash. I don't know if it's a good comparison to speak to Supervisor Wish's point. We can't afford these things. And if looked at in an isolated instance, what's $20,000? Well, when you make, 500 decisions at $10,000, $20,000, they all add up. We need to watch every one of these decisions. I look at Kenosha. I always like to compare to Kenosha on, specific aspects because they do have a lot of comparable metrics to us. They're sitting at 123,000. We're sitting at 122,000. We're in the ballpark. Let's stick with the standard raise that's already been proposed by the finance committee. The work was done at committee level. Let's stick to it. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions?
Yeah, Chair.
Supervisor Pritzker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let me go to Supervisor Miller here first.
Hey, just a clarification in your handout, and thank you Supervisor Preisker for the research. But in your handout, you noted that the budget is about 66% of the property tax. And then in your discussion, you said 66% of the budget, that while the sheriff and jail is only about 17% of the total budget. So so for folks who are listening, I want to make that clarifying point.
Right. So
Supervisor Pritzker now.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Miller. I want to clarify that Kenosha has already approved that for 2027 that it's going to the base pay is going to be over 129,000. So we are not knowingly going into the proposal being in line with Kenosha. The proposed is still being much less than that. It would make us, dead last in the region.
Okay. Any further questions?
Chairman.
Supervisor Wishaw.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to agree with the majority of my colleagues that have spoke tonight. I'm in favor of keeping the proposal as is that was vetted by the finance committee. So that is where I would like to see this move.
Supervisor Horth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's unfortunate that I read everything that Supervisor Pritzker put in here. And I would tell you personally that I agree with all of the comments and all of the items that he specifically outlined. The challenge that I'm having is that we have a county that has some fiscal challenges, not only today, but certainly as we're looking going forward into next year, and let's call it 1, 3, 5 years. And so it's difficult at this point to send a message that we're going to support something like this, when in fact we know that we have so many other areas that are also in need that we're not able to deal with that way. So again, everything he says here, it makes perfect sense to me. But when you look at our county as a whole and where we currently stand and the importance that we have to look at already, by the way, I'm sure it's not escaped anyone that we're starting our budget for next year in a couple of months. And so when we start thinking of it that way, I just feel we have to be very strong in how we're trying to establish our fiscal responsibility. So thank you very much. And thank you, Supervisor Pritzker, for the effort and the energy. I echo what everybody else has already said. This shouldn't be seen as a slight against you or against the idea. It's just, I think logistically, the timing is not appropriate.
Okay, so I'm gonna roll call. Yes, we had a roll call before. I've got a question for Corp Counsel. There are multiple S resolutions. Do we take them one at a time? Or do we? There's no one motion on the other S, right? But
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I couldn't hear the other comment, but to your question, that I heard only one substitute resolution can be considered at a time.
That's what I thought.
That's what's presently before the board.
Okay, so this is going to be a 2/3 majority roll call vote. Why don't you queue us up? Majority?
Majority vote for the motion to amend or substitute.
Majority, I guess.
And Mr. Chairman, if we could just clarify what the vote is going to entail. A yes vote means what? A no
A
vote?
yes vote, you would go with the resolution.
Okay.
Substitute the first one here.
Thank you.
And that would be the county sheriff is 145 and 27, 148, 625 and 28, 153, 83 and 29, and 157, 676 and 30. The clerk of courts is 98, 566 and 27, 101, 30 and 28, 104, 61 and 29, and 107, 183 and 30.
Okay, first we'll all have to check in, and then I'm going to just make sure that we have this clarified for the vote, that you're voting yes or no to substitute the ordinance, correct? We're not actually voting on, or excuse me, the resolution, we're not actually voting on the ordinance itself.
Okay, so we all check in?
Yeah, we're checking in.
We got,
This always happens.
okay. I am trying.
Try the confirm button again. There we go.
There we go.
One more time. There we
Okay,
go.
so this is the vote.
Supervisor Wishaw, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Thank you. That motion fails. Let me just document this quickly. It won't take long.
That vote fails 18-1 with 2 absent.
Thank you. Leave this in discussion.
Okay, Supervisor Coleman?
you guys, which leads me to my resolution. Now, if you look at my resolution, it was all the numbers that you guys had already approved, minus, instead of the 122, we would start at the 128, and then we would end with 139, but it would be what you guys would be paying in 2028, 2029, and then so forth going on. So I was thinking that if we started at the 128, then we would end at 139. So that's where I got my numbers from, the exact resolution. And I pretty much just moved some things around. I took it upon myself.
Okay, just a second.
Oh,
We have a motion.
we
Do
have a motion
second?
to-
You made the motion. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? We have a motion, a second. Continue, Supervisor Coleman.
okay. So I took it upon myself to take it to the community. And I posted the proposed, and the community agreed with me. These are the numbers that you guys are already approving. We're just flopping some numbers around. So I think that it deserves respect enough to go through, for the simple fact being that these are numbers that you're going to pay anyway. But why not start out paying right? Fair. I know that we're going to fall behind. We'll never be in the top 5 or whatever, but we'll be somewhere fair at least, instead of starting with the 122. If we started with the 128 and ended with the 139, what's the harm in that? These are the same numbers that you guys already approved, minus 122 and 139. I'm just gonna keep it simple.
Any further comments? Supervisor Rossi.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you Supervisor Coleman for proposing this. I'm just gonna take the hard line of let's stick to what was done in finance. The legwork was done. It was workshopped there and they spent quite a bit of time on it. So I'm gonna vote for the initial resolution, not any of the S resolutions. Thank you.
Any further comments? Then I call a question. This will be roll call vote.
And again, this will be a vote on whether or not to substitute S-2 for the original resolution. It is not a vote to adopt the resolution itself.
So let me go over this just like I did before. The county sheriff's salary in 27 would be 128,749. In 28, 132,611. 29 would be 136,590. And 2030 it would be 139,70. The clerk of courts would be 730. What'd I say? Okay, clerk of courts is 98,566 and 27. In 28, it's 101.30. In 29, it's 104.61. And in 2030, it would be 107.184. This is vote.
Supervisor Wishaw, how do you vote?
I'm going to be a no on this one as well.
Thank you. And again, let me record that, but that motion fails. So again, that fails 3-16.
3-16 with 2 absent. Are there any further comments? Any other substitutions? Okay, then we'll move on to the 2025-90. Any comments on the current proposal for the county sheriff's office? And I don't have it. Here it is. Any comments? Okay, I call a question. Call.
Supervisor Wishaw,
We're voting on the original resolution.
Yep, I'm gonna be a yes.
okay, I think there's been some confusion, so we're going to.
You started.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, my apologies. I may not have listened properly. What are we voting on exactly?
Voting on the original resolution from the committee.
From the committee. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right,
And this is a 2/3 majority.
right. We will have to check in again. Supervisor Coleman, try the confirm button again. There you go. Okay, now we will be voting, and I have your vote, Supervisor Wishaw, as a yes. That motion carries. Let me just record that.
That was 17 yes, 2 no, 2 absent.
Okay.
So Supervisor Trotter, 2025-91.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution 2025-91 does address a 3-year agreement with Spectrum for internet services at our Racine Public Health Department. It's a 3-year at $6,000 per year shown in the fiscal note. These funds are incorporated or included in the 2026 budget and will improve the overall communications within a department. I do have Robert here to address any questions about the financial, about the fiscal note. I need a motion.
Is there a motion?
Second.
And a second? Okay, we've got a motion and second. There's discussion. Robert, would you like to give a short, brief explanation?
Thank you for letting me speak. So this contract is to provide internet services for the public health building. Currently, they're on a month-to-month contract, and we did recheck initially in the FHR meeting. We said it was $700 a month. It's actually $799 per month. So we are able to provide longer-term services consistent with the speed that they need. So this is the 500 meg, sorry, it was 100 megabits per second. Which is the speed that they have now, which is sufficient enough for their use. And by going to a longer term contract, we're able to get that at $500 per month for a 3-year agreement. So this is part of taking a look at our telecommunications budgets and really trying to lock in longer term contracts to get our operational costs down. So this one was pretty easy. Jeff mentioned that they were on a month-to-month contract. We reach out to our vendor, and they're able to provide this service, and we're taking it in front of the board for your approval.
Any questions? Okay, so this is a 2/3 vote also.
Supervisor Wishaw, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And that motion carries unanimously. Now we have the item that was requested for first and second reading this evening. That would be resolution number 2025-92 by Finance and Human Resources Committee authorizing a 5-year agreement from 2026 through 2030 with Unisolutions for budget procurement software for a total of $411,301 and transfer within the 2026 budget. And this is also a 2/3 vote.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Supervisor Trotter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the board for allowing this with unanimous consent to be discussed and taken on the agenda tonight. Resolution 2025-92. This will modernize our financial and procurement operations. The software will provide large improvements in our procurement, our project management, our budget books, a capital book, and real time. These are just to mention a couple of things. It will also help reduce errors, streamline our efficiency, maintain cycles, operational efficiencies, and improve the procurement competition. I believe this is something in the county executive's idea, this procurement, consolidating this. I have Byron Dean here to run over the details of this request this evening. Good evening, Byron.
Good evening, Chairman, County Board members. I also have Dwayne McKinney here, procurement agent. So if there's any questions that he can help answer, he can hop in as well. So I did come prepared to share similar information as I did last week. So if it's a little bit redundant, I apologize for that. But thank you for the opportunity to present this resolution. It is a very important and a little bit of a pressing issue. So we thank you for your consideration for first and second reading tonight. Today, Finances, again, is requesting a county board approval for multi-year agreement with Unisolutions for budget and procurement software solutions. Supervisor, Vice Chair Trotter shared some of the high-level benefits of the solution. So thank you very much for that. But so we may want to consider why now, okay, and what are the challenges we face. So we have lean staffing levels in finance, okay? We have 2 FTE in the purchasing division and 2 FTE in the budget division. So for example, lean compared to who? I heard some comparisons to Kenosha, Waukesha, and Walworth County tonight. So for example, peers like Kenosha, they have 5 purchasing FTE and 5 budget FTE. Waukesha has 6 purchasing FTE and 5 budget FTE. And Walworth has 7 purchasing FTE and 5 budget FTE. So that's all despite a similar or larger scale, okay? So that's kind of how we kind of compare a little bit to some of our surrounding counties. So we currently also rely heavily on manual spreadsheets and kind of a disjointed, little separated tools, which increase risk of error, slows processes, and limit reporting visibility internally and externally. The unit platform will reduce the manual work, maintain continuity of operations, which is pretty huge, and prevent burnout from our smaller teams. A little bit of background. The current budget solution we use is Gravity. This is just for our budget book, okay? It doesn't do anything else. It just does budget book. There's still a lot that goes into it. It's good for its cost, okay? But it just doesn't do a whole lot. We reached out to Gravity in November to try to renegotiate the renewal that's coming up in July of 2026. And from just going through last year's budget cycle and listening to some of the things that seem to be expected from the county board as far as what they'd like to see incorporated on the financial side of things, we heard just an improved capital improvement plan, a separate capital budget book, just to make the capital piece clearer and easier to track. Data transparency, which is huge. Everyone's moving to data transparency, public-facing data that's accessible to them, and the automated interface also between the software and the county's ERP or financial system. And this will just make real-time data updates a lot more convenient and doable as far as pushing data out there to the public. So the quote for those additional things, not just the budget book, for those additional things from Gravity was $46,000. At the same time, we were looking for software solutions for procurement because of some of the direction we've gotten from county leadership. So we looked for procurement software that specifically enhanced RFP tracking, contract management, and help the county move toward a more centralized procurement process with the intention of cutting costs and saving money. So saving money might look like, okay, freeing up time, some of Dwayne's time to better provide oversight for vendor relationships and competitive pricing, okay? And I don't want to oversell something and underdeliver, but that one area could free up a lot of time for Dwayne to actually do more competitive pricing things instead of just processing day-to-day things, taking less time on RFPs and more time on just basically refocusing our philosophy in purchasing. And I think this would be a tool to help us do that. The contract management piece would greatly reduce the likelihood of missed contract deadlines on renewals and help identify contracts that are, again, up for RFP to make sure we're doing those on an appropriate basis and following our procurement rules. So through Dwayne's professional contact, UNA Solutions was referred to the county. So we contacted UNA right away to schedule some demonstrations. We liked what we saw. The whole team was impressed, especially because the software seemed to meet all the county's requirements. During that initial demonstration, they also said they have a budget solution tailored to public sector needs. So of course because we were in kind of preliminary conversations with our current software provider, we wanted to reach out to get an idea of what else was out there. So we contacted UNA and they set up some demonstrations for us as well for the budget piece. And that was really good as well. And we were very impressed. The solution on the budget side would meet all of the county's requirements that we could ascertain from county leadership with the improved capital improvement plan, separate capital budget book, data transparency, automated interface, all of that was covered. In addition, UNA is a little bit unique in their solution because what they can do is they can facilitate the entire budget process versus a piecemeal approach that we take today. So all the collaboration we do between department heads, county leadership, the finance department, all would be done within the software. It wouldn't be a piecemeal approach anymore using, Excel spreadsheets, access databases, and different things. Okay. So this would bring the entire process under one roof. It would streamline the alignment of the county's overall strategic goals. It helps streamline these with department-specific goals and allow convenient tracking using key performance indicators. It provide needed tools to meet the county goal of strategic financial forecasting. They do use artificial intelligence and they're building this right into the software to do some more data-driven decision-making using the AI tools, which is pretty impressive, and they're building that out. It would allow for the creation of multiple budget products without being charged additional fees. One of the things that we were a little bit surprised about using our current provider is that they wanted a separate amount, basically double for the capital budget book, okay? And so it made it needful for us to kind of pivot and look in other areas. So, so under this current, under unit solution, no matter how many budget books you had, it's all covered under that solution. Okay. So if we had a ops, a capital, other books that might be needful in the future, it'd be all part of the solution, which is very convenient for the county. But most importantly, and I said this last week too, the unit platform will ensure continuity of operations by eliminating complexity and simplifying standard operating procedures. So God forbid something happens to Gwen, something happens to me, people retire or whatever the case, you know, this solution in place would help just ensure that continuity of operations. More and more, it's getting hard to find people with a certain skill set to do a lot of manual number crunching and calculation. And this solution would do a lot of that heavy lifting. It'd be within the system, which would help free up time for other things. So just real quick, a cost breakdown, a little bit on funding. So what's before you, if you looked at the fiscal note, the total cost for 2026 would be about $122,000. And we know that's a lot. The non-reoccurring portion is about $65,000. And the reoccurring portion from year to year would be about $68,500. Of that, $48,500 is for the budget piece and $20,000 would be for the procurement piece. There's a 3% escalator built into the budget side only, okay? So it would go up gradually over the course of years 2 through 5. The funding would be covered in 2026 from a transfer from finance to the IT department. The cost for the software solution lives within IT, IT's software subscription account. And, but in the finance department, we have an account where we keep track of all the revenue we collect from cooperative purchase agreements. And this just sits in the finances budget. One example of a use of those funds was the Discover Wisconsin project that's currently underway. And there's more money sitting in there that we could transfer over for 2026 to cover the cost of this. And then going forward, it'd be incorporated into future budgets. We also have $15,000 that would be redirected from our existing software solution from Gravity. That's just for the budget book. That would be redirected toward the new solution in future budgets. There is expected net savings from procurement improvements, error reduction, and efficiencies. Again, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but it seems very reasonable to believe that there's going to be some cost savings. I just can't put a number to it. Understand that there's some urgency in this request, so we do thank you again for the consideration for first and second reading today. Under county board leadership and guidance, we're aiming to deliver the 2027 budget book about a month earlier. A couple of weeks, we're moving it up from October to September. So that's one of the reasons for the request. While the shortened timeline isn't ideal, acting now will lock in competitive pricing, and it ensures a quality budget solution for this upcoming cycle for 2027 and for years to come. So just in closing, the investment modernizes critical financial and procurement operations, positions Racine County for long-term efficiency and data transparency, and supports our small teams in delivering high-quality services. For these reasons and those previously stated, Finance recommends approving the resolution authorizing the agreement with Unit Solutions. So we do thank you very much for your support and consideration, and we're happy to answer any questions or provide additional details.
Are there any questions? Supervisor Spencer.
Thank you. I may have missed this, but when you started, you were comparing us to other counties with the FTEs. How many are Racine?
We have 2 in the purchasing division and 2 in the budget division.
Okay.
So,
So compared to them, we have 4 and they have
10 or more.
Yeah. Thank you.
Supervisor Varant.
Does any portion of this grant include working with them for some of their advanced grant research in their grant exec eval software?
Supervisor, I'm not sure about the grant piece of things on the procurement side. It would help us to do all of our RFPs within the software and the contract management also within the software. I'm not sure if there's a grant component in the software. Do you want to talk about a little bit?
I don't know much about
Okay.
it, but there is a grant component
So-
that is along with the other different ones.
So that would be a separate module.
Correct.
I'd be curious to know what the cost is to add that module or how that could enhance us, because that could be very helpful.
Absolutely. Unit Solutions, they do provide a lot of different modules, but we were just looking at certain ones. And
Well, if you have time, maybe it's a good thing to ask about that.
absolutely.
And maybe Travis Richardson would
Absolutely.
be able to evaluate it along with the county executives. Supervisor Rossi.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm usually the one providing the comparison, so I'd like to address one item in particular, the Kenosha comparison. When comparing to a county with a better financial situation, I'm usually comparing to items of savings so that we can realize that, you know, there is the opportunity to save money. What I would like to address is the ratios, as you're saying that you have between two departments or two divisions of the same department that are assisting with the budget process. You said 4 and Kenosha has approximately 10.
Approximately, I believe so.
Approximately 10. Well, if you multiply that out, Kenosha would have about 2.5 times the staff working on it.
I didn't look at their total staff.
Well, it's just for the point of this exercise. So the issue there is that Kenosha does not have 2.5 times the total employees of Racine County. They don't have 2,500. So they have comparably the same amount of FTEs that we have. So it's really an allocation of employees at that point when we have comparable employment levels. So it's not like they're dealing with a lot more people that they're able to allocate. They just have different allocations of total FTEs within their government. So I just wanted to address that one item. Next. Was this sent out for formal RFP?
No, it was not.
Okay. Were you working with the existing vendor trying to renew and they propose new features, or is this something that you requested during that process? I'm trying to understand that.
So the new features as far as the capital improvement plan and the separate capital budget book, these are things we requested from Gravity based on what we believed was the desire of county leadership, including the board.
Why, if these were concerns that were brought up in the last budget session, and honestly, I do remember these concerns being brought up in the 2025 budget cycle, so back in 2024. Well, no, getting my years mixed up with how long I've been here. It feels like it's been much longer. But either way, 2 previous budget cycles. Why wouldn't this be looked at then as an opportunity for the budget to then actually have this budgeted and then, you know, priced and properly purchased? Why is it an emergency now when none of us have really heard anything about this particular item?
So Supervisor, to answer your question, we started looking for new softwares right after the last budget cycles ended in November. We got the initial quote from our current vendor and we thought it wasn't good enough. So we wanted to, you know, do a little due diligence and see what else was out there. We happened upon this solution from a professional reference and we pursued it. And we didn't know where the end would be, but it seems like it'd be good fit for the county. But I do agree as much as possible that it would have been good to have in the budget cycle for 2026. It just didn't work out that way this time. We didn't have a quote, so we didn't have a price to put in to request. And besides that, there was just a lot going on at the time. And not least of all, me trying to fill the shoes of the finance director, which are very large shoes to fill, and juggling a lot of balls. You know, there was just a lot going on. I'm not trying to make excuses, but it's just is for myself personally. Now, don't get me wrong, our team pulled together to do a great job, and they did a fantastic job stepping up to fill that void, the large void that was left when Gwen was on maternity leave. And this is just one of the things that maybe It would have been good to think about a little bit more at that time, but we just didn't get to.
I understand, and thank you, and I can agree. I think you guys did a great job. I don't
Thank you,
think consider,
Supervisor.
even without, I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
I would like to say now, and this is the end of my comments. I'm getting deja vu to the situation that we were in with the previous IT director when we had another emergency software situation. This isn't necessarily an emergency.
Supervisor, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I never said this was an emergency.
Oh, I was just
software.
clarifying. I was just clarifying that this isn't necessarily
never-
an emergency, but
And
this
you
is
also made a
first and
comment
second reading.
before, and you also made a comment before, Supervisor, saying not following the proper procurement rules. We are following the proper.
No,
procurement.
budget. I mentioned the budget process.
Earlier, though, I meant to touch on that, and I just forgot. I'm remembering now.
No,
So, but
to me, you know, an RFP process, since you wanted to talk about that now, an RFP process then would be the proper process I would have thought would have been implemented. And you said yourself that this wasn't bid. Am I misunderstanding something?
If I may respond to that, our ordinance does not require us to do an RFP for this. And we're going off of competitive procurement that was already done on nationwide contracts as referenced in our memo. Sourcewell and Omnia are both nationwide cooperative purchasing agreements, and RFP is not necessary because they already did the RFP and we're piggybacking off of that
Okay.
pricing.
And again, my comments originally, I'm focusing on the budget portion of this. You know, I don't like mid-year transfers. And as I was mid-correction there about this is not necessarily an emergency, but when it calls for first and second reading at the same meeting, is there a heightened sense of urgency, can we at least say?
If I may, the chairman of the finance committee was the one who recommended that this item go for first and second reading. I am completely comfortable with it going first reading tonight and second reading at the next meeting as outlined on our fiscal note and in our memo.
Okay.
It's at the discretion and the pleasure of the committee. and
Okay,
the
I'll
board.
take that. I do remember comments about there being, you know, we wanted the budget 2 weeks earlier than normal. And I believe those were your comments. So there's a reason to expedite.
Yeah, the chairman of the board.
Excuse me, those were my comments. We wanted it 2 weeks early so we could start the process 2 weeks early.
Okay, thank you.
Those were my comments.
Yeah, the board leadership, Chairman Kramer and others have received the draft 2027 budget calendar, which includes presenting the budget from the county executive to this board early. And, you know, I of course, I would love more time to be able to implement a software and be able to do it right for the longevity of the software. If this was a 5-year contract, we plan for it to be our solution going forward. We want to do it right. However, like I said, it's at the pleasure of this board. If you choose not to do a first and second reading tonight, I completely understand and I'm in support of that action.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
I would encourage everyone to avoid another situation where we are decoupled from the budget process and making a commitment for a $400,000 software, which starts off with a, you know, a 50-50 split nearly of implementation and software cost. This is something that we should look at doing during the budget process. And I understand, you know, there is a desire to improve our processes, and we can absolutely do that next year. We didn't have any failures of the budget process last year. Everything went well. I'd like to see this go through the budget process and then be included in next year's budget, and then we can get the software for the next budget cycle. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Supervisor Miller.
Yeah, thank you. And this is the second time I'm hearing the presentation, but I think I would appreciate just a little more specifics on the point of data transparency and a better budget process. Could you maybe give us
Sure.
an anecdote or?
Sure. So data transparency, basically having public facing data and data visualizations on our website. Okay. The city of Largo is a current client of Unisolutions. So that would be something you could look at to get a little bit of a flavor of what that might be. But basically we can make it whatever we want to. So whatever the supervisor would like to see at ready access for members of the public to have access to, we can put that public facing right away. And this data also would be refreshed on a periodic basis, whatever we chose. whether it was daily or weekly or monthly, but it'd be refreshed automatically and made available to the public right away. So that's a little bit on data transparency. Is that enough, or did you want more?
That is helpful.
The process I can talk about next if you.
Yeah, the process, and then maybe just a little bit on how, if we're having a revision of our procurement philosophy and practice, I think a little bit on that would be helpful.
I'd like to just speak about the budget software. The city of Largo in Florida is a good example. It's the one that they demoed for us. It looks very similar to our budget book when you look at it online, where you can click on the department, it brings you to it, but there are built-in graphs and filters and different data components of it that many of the questions that we received that were included in the budget FAQ documentation were exactly that. Tell me more about how many wages are in the sheriff's office. Tell me more about the trend of the overtime over the last 7 years. All of that would be made available so you can do it at your fingertips, which would save you time and save us time. Because we're not downloading it from the system and sending it out. You'd be able to do it all on your own, and not only you, but the public as well. So it would be automatically linked to our financial data and be able to pull it. On the capital side of it, which is something I've heard, highway and equipment are big areas of emphasis for this board. We would be able to add progress to it. So we've gotten questions before, particularly by Supervisor Horth, of where are we at currently with that project? How much have we spent? How much have we contracted? What's the status of it? That would all be built into it. It would include a GIS map, so you can see exactly what section of the road you're looking at on, where that improvement is being made. And it would, again, be built into the financial software. So you click refresh and you would say, okay, that was at $10,000. Now it's at $50,000. You'll automatically see the payments that are happening for it. And as far as the budget software, I would invite the county executive to speak about that if he'd like to, but he made very apparent to me on his first day in the office that he is a big fan of centralized purchasing, which is very difficult to do when you have two people in purchasing. So the sheriff's office typically does a lot of their own purchasing, while the documents do come to the finance department for processing. The getting of the quotes and RFPs and evaluating that really is handled a lot by the departments. So this would give us an opportunity to put that all in one central location with one central oversight so that we can say, oh, we might have some savings over here. Exactly like IT Director Valero was speaking of earlier, we would be able to see all of the Spectrum contracts all at one point and say, we probably can negotiate better savings here if we move to a long-term contract, or be able to run scenarios like that, which would lead to savings both monetarily and time for this board.
As far as the budget process as well, Supervisor Miller. So right now we do a lot with spreadsheets, okay? And so, for example, payroll projections, that's a very convoluted spreadsheet that has been an evolution for many years. And payroll is very kind of nuanced, and it's a little bit complicated. So it'll replace that. The payroll projection will be brought into the system. So it'd free up time for that. There's also decision packages that are made every year, and we have a smart sheet that we use. But again, that's a little disjointed, and we keep data in different places, have to move it back and forth between systems. This would all be in one place. So and for example, if you put a decision package in for a capital project this year, that would stay there, and it could become part of the budgets in future years if it was not approved for whatever reason, whatever workflow step it was entered in, because it's from finance to the department to the county executive to the county board. So there's kind of a workflow built into the system. So payroll projections, decision packages, and also just the communication we do with department heads. All that would be within the system. You can leave notes, on accounts and various things. There's over 4,000 accounts we budget on. So it'd be very useful to have everything in one place, and all that data would be saved from year to year without having to try to capture it and convert it to the new year and kind of start over with those templates that we currently use now. So just make the collaboration between stakeholders a lot smooth, a lot more seamless. it'd all be integrated in one place, and it would save everything for future years as well. So if there's a special account you had to put a note on, that note would be available, next year for, whoever's there. So.
So all of that sounds terrific. I guess, I hate to say it, but I may be showing my age, but when you implement a new software, I think it's a lot of work. And I have the highest regard for finance staff, but, is that going to be a really big challenge to switch over to a new software as you begin the budget process?
I'll speak to that. That was given to me as the sense of urgency if you want to install it this year and make it work for this year's budget process. To Gwen's point, I find it very difficult to follow our purchasing, and this would centralize our procurement issues, and I could figure out what exactly is going on from that standpoint. It also, my understanding that upfront fee is them building this process, helping us build it. So it's not all together on the finance team's shoulders to put it together. They come in and build it. It's also my understanding that they put years of history into it. So you can look at historical trends and you can also project out financials, which is something that we've talked about many, many times. Now I understand Supervisor Rossi's concern with building it into the budget. It's up to you how far and how fast you want to go. Last year during the process, we talked about, are you using AI? There's a component to that that's going to be built into this. Again, how far and how fast do you want to move? That's where we're at.
But yes, I do believe that we can get it successfully implemented in time. But again, that is one of the reasons for the urgency. So.
Supervisor Kolb. I got a couple. Who determines what is going to be released to the public on this? Is that up to the county executive? Is that going to be the finance taking it to the county executive?
So I think it'll be a collaborative process, Supervisor. So we're happy to take feedback from the county board as well. County, of course, the county executive, or finance professionals. So we have a flavor for what may not be useful. But if there's certain things that we want to make sure the public can see, that aren't currently out there, of course, we will do everything we can to build that out. So really, it's whatever our imagination takes us and whatever we think would be useful to the public.
Does IT, have you worked with IT on how this will be pushed? Because this is going to go through the county website then?
So yes, we haven't worked out all those details, but it would be the links that would be branded like the county's websites, but it would be actually hosted on a Unisolution platform. So, so it would look like the county's website, but it would actually not be part of our website.
Okay. Some of this, when I got on the board, I was always told, we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem. We got the sales tax and we blew through that. And I see a lot of these in budget transferring back and forth. And going back through some of this, and this is what gets us in trouble in our budget. And I'm coming to be that we do have a spending problem. It's just we're not tracking it right to see it. And I think it's a lot of this in budget stuff that's getting us in trouble. So I really like what you're doing. I really like the idea. I just wish, like a lot of others, it would have been in the budget ahead of time, because it is a big increase. If we're not cutting a position or having an offset somehow, it's a convenience that it comes at the taxpayer's expense. And as much as I like the employees of Racine County and I want to help you guys out, it's the taxpayer that put my butt in the seat and voted for me. And that's who I represent. And we're not happy with a sales tax and a property tax increase this year. So I guess that I just think this stuff has to be done ahead of time in the budget.
have a question. I'm gonna skip in front of just a second if you allow me to. So we're taking out of the corporate purchases.
Cooperative purchases.
Yeah, the, where we're the fiscal.
Yes.
agent, and we get a funding for that. So we're taking the whole balance as of the current balance right now. What do we expect to get from that, or what kind of historically have we gotten in the past?
So every year, well, last year was about $450,000. Correct. I believe that came in. 105 was repurposed, the rest stayed. From previous years, it's in a non-lapsing account. So there's still a balance that needs to be carried forward from 25 into 26. So what you're seeing on the fiscal note is just what was in the 26 field for now. But once I carry forward that balance into that account, it'll be a higher balance than the 122. It'll be closer to $400,000.
$400,000. So the corporate purchasing paperwork, that's in what area?
Finance.
Finance and purchasing.
Yes.
So is it possible, since it's $400,000 and it's $411,000, it has no, does it work out to be able to pay for this with the corporate purchasing? And of course, that's just me looking at the numbers and talking here.
If that was what the,
And I see the finance director shaking her heads, and I see the county executive saying that's acceptable. So I don't know what the process would be, but that's maybe one of the options here, so it doesn't affect the levy.
Yeah, Chairman, you're exactly right. This would not impact the levy. This is not taxpayer dollars. This is revenue earned by the finance department for work performed on nationwide third-party administrator of nationwide procurement contracts. We get 2.5% of all sales made through Omnia. WCA gets the other 2.5%, but that is roofing and HVAC and office supplies and.
I understand that, but this is a multi-year contract.
Yep.
And we really need to put that in a non-lapsing account, specially put for this project,
Absolutely.
and then we get off the, it doesn't go on the levy, we had some budgeted because we're gonna have to renew the software anyways, so there's some that was there, but,
Yes, absolutely. We can do that, Chairman.
okay. Supervisor Horth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robert, if I heard correctly, you said it was going to cost this year $121,000,
122 about.
122,000 this year. How much of that is going to be offset by grants?
There's no grant revenue associated with this purchase.
Okay. Is there anything that will help offset this other than transfers from another department?
As far as transfer from finance,
Yeah,
from
from
the
finance
cooperative
or however,
purchase
yeah, you'd offset
agreement
the
that
expense.
the chairman just mentioned to IT. It'll be partially offset by what we currently pay for our existing software.
Okay. The reason I'm asking the question that way, and Gwen, this may ultimately come back to finance, is that I mentioned last year during the budgeting process that this discussion regarding the transferring of funds to offset expense overages, I'll call it that right now, is very concerning to me, but it gives me the chance to ask the question, and maybe we can look into it. What have we done historically when it comes to the transferring of funds to offset expense variances? And it may not even be a discussion for this topic right now, but it would be very interesting for me to see, and maybe the others, for us to see how many times we are missing our expense budgets and having to transfer funds for purposes of helping offset that. Because two things will happen. One, we'll have the chance to see how the budgeting is being done and how effective it is. No criticisms, because people make mistakes. Or two, it'll validate that, hey, we now know where we need to budget going forward when it comes to some of these assumptions. So to me, it's hard for me once again, and by the way, I know you were right, Robert, the term emergency shouldn't have been used, maybe, but it is hard for me to, again, sitting here on March the 10th, to now receive a request for 411,000, 122 of it'll come into this year's budget, as opposed to now saying to myself, maybe this, and I don't disagree with the sense of urgency. Okay, I get it all. And everything you said makes sense. The problem is, once again, we have some fiscal challenges within the county that hopefully we're all trying to help support, improve upon. And it doesn't mean that yours isn't important, but just like we did a little while ago to another resolution, right now it's a process of saying, man, maybe this needs to be one we put in the plan for next year. Anticipate it, prepare for it, plan for it, highlight it, and then we consider moving forward on it. That's just, I had to say, but Gwen, the topic on transfers, that might be an interesting exercise. I don't want to make more work. I'm sorry about that.
There is no work. It's a normal process. It's outlined in our ordinance and it happens every year.
Well, that would be wonderful for all of us to see. because then-
Supervisor, do you have any on the program here? I mean, we understand.
Point
Yep.
taken. Thank you for correcting me, Mr. Chairman. I think you understand where I'm coming.
You look at the quotes, you have an idea of what they did. So, so the two quotes that were given, they showed what the initial pricing was. And again, this might just be part of their normal sales process, but if you believe that, it'll be $85,000 for the budget piece next year, and it'd be about, I don't want to say more for the, 40 to 60,000 for the procurement piece.
Yeah.
So this is piggybacked on a contract.
Between those cooperative
Right.
arrangements and our own negotiations.
So is that, with state contracts, sometimes they're 2-3 years? Do we know? I mean, it's usually in the fine print.
This is a 5-year agreement.
It's a 5-year agreement, but the contract with the purchasing group,
There's 2 purchasing groups that we started with, and then ultimately we negotiated even further down from
Yeah.
those.
So I
Okay.
believe our pricing is more favorable.
it's favorable,
It is, yep.
but I'm just wondering, because they'll change the base price. Maybe July 1st or maybe January 1st. That's just a question, you
Yeah,
know,
I-
because, yeah, you get what I'm talking about.
I do.
Okay.
I wasn't finished though. Can I? Okay. So I just want to say there is a huge amount of work that's done by very few employees in our finance department. And this opportunity to upgrade before our 2027 budget is I mean, it's going to be worth it. All of these things that we're talking about can be done to Supervisor Kolb's point on the spending. I mean, I'm guessing here, but that can be tracked easily. So, I mean, that's an improvement. That's exactly what you're looking for. So to me, this, like, I'm fully on board with this. Thank you.
Supervisor Rossi.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just wanted to speak to the, did Supervisor Green?
Well,
I'll be brief. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to speak to looking at, we're talking about the reconciliation process that happens in, I think, second quarter. The overspends and underspends of the county. I think that looking at, comparing a new cost to a revenue account is looking at a situation in a vacuum, when in reality, we need to look at the totality of expenses that happens in the reconciliation process. Just cherry picking a revenue stream and then saying, well, we've got a revenue stream coming to cover this cost, when in reality, we've got things that are going to be overexpensed. Supervisor Caprillion knows one of those being our overtime, and how that's actually handled throughout the year. I forget how many over the last 10 years, I forget how many budgets were, or how many years were over budget versus under budget. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Again, I don't want to belabor the point because I don't think that's the point of this topic, but I will note that our ordinance states our total budget authority is the total expenses within a department. So if a department goes over in overtime but under in another area, they're still within their budget authority. And the resolution that we prepare at the end of the audit, which will be presented to the Finance Committee at the first meeting of May, will show all of those areas that have a true up. And for the last several years, we have added to our reserves. So the net expense savings has been an increase to our reserves.
But could you say the last 10, how many?
I've been the director for 4 years. So out of 4, it's been 4.
Okay. I would just caution once again, and we are talking about a department balancing itself, but this isn't, we're not saying, omitting costs somewhere else right now. This is purely an ad, and I'll take your note on that. I'm not going to belabor it anymore. Thank you.
Supervisor Caprillion, I didn't see you behind.
Chairman.
We gotta put the bigger guys in the back row and the little people in the front, just like at a picture, because I can't.
Make your screen bigger on the little mic.
I don't have a screen. That's the problem.
Oh, okay. I take that back. All right, very good. So I appreciate the hardiness of this discussion because it is quite hardy. There's a lot of contribution coming in from supervisors, and there's a lot of info consumption. This is where I'm pausing and I'm stuck on. Director Zimmer had mentioned at the beginning, I think, when Supervisor Rossi made a comment after the RFP question was asked, was talking about the first and second reading, why that's before us, because we're going off our normal path. So it then implies there's a sense of urgency. And I can understand, and I'm hearing it. I'm hearing why it'd be helpful to have it implemented early. And I can state for most everything I do in my life, I wish I had more time. And I know this wasn't a request from you, Director Zimmer, and you made that clear. And to me, because the director who is overseeing the department, who is looking for this to be passed, I would ask for an amendment, or I'd make a motion for amendment to strike the second reading and have this be for first reading only, due to the fact that because of the hardiness of this discussion, I know it's given me a lot to consume as well. And I would like the opportunity to also bring this back up at second reading. So with that, I make a motion to amend to strike the second reading and first reading only this evening.
Corp Counsel, could you weigh in on this one?
Sure. So I think to affect what Supervisor Caprillion is talking about, there's a couple of different options. One, I just want to kind of set the expectations that, so the normal rule per ordinance is for first and second reading to occur on separate nights. At the committee level, and then again tonight, there was a request for unanimous consent to allow for first and second reading to occur. There was no objection raised at that point. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily a final decision. There is still opportunity for, if there's a single objection to doing first and second reading tonight, it could go to a vote, and that vote would be to either suspend rules, that's a 2/3 vote. And so if there is objection to the second reading this evening, one option is to take that to a formal vote of a motion to suspend. The other point, I believe Supervisor Miller was just making this, there could be a motion to refer it back to committee. So those are a couple of the options to affect what I understand your request to be.
Could I then just change that motion to a motion to suspend to allow my point, what I'm trying to get at and what I hear you, Corporation Counsel, saying is that I would like second reading to happen at our next county board meeting to follow the suit of our normal first reading at one and then second reading. If we go back to committee, that just starts that process all over again. I don't need to add one extra committee meeting to this.
I actually tried to pantomime, but he didn't catch it. I was gonna suggest a motion to do exactly what you're saying, that we vote on it next meeting.
Perfect.
So you
So
can make
that
that
is-
motion.
Okay, I will make the motion
To
to
refer it to the next county board meeting.
refer it to the next county board meeting.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded to refer to the next county board meeting. That's a simple majority? That's a majority vote, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 12, reconsiderations of resolutions and ordinances from previous meetings and or action on vetoes.
Sorry, there are no items.
Item number 13, reconsideration of and or notice of intent to reconsider resolutions and ordinances.
There are none.
Informational reports.
Report number 2025-67 by Finance and Human Resources Committee announcing the distribution of sales and use tax revenue for February 2026. Report number 2025-68 by Finance and Human Resources Committee submitting annual claims of $500 or less settled for the year 2025 by Racine County Corporation Council. Report number 2025-69 by Finance and Human Resources Committee authorizing the settlement of the claim of Daniel R. Autumn. And report number 2025-70 by Finance and Human Resources Committee authorizing the settlement of the claim of Progressive on behalf of Andrew P. Draper.
Item number 15, miscellaneous business announcements or all reports.
Mr. Chairman,
Just this, I've got one first.
defer to the chair.
I'd like to recognize Supervisor Jody Spencer. She's been awarded by the Heritage Committee the award for political activity. Thank you. And then I've got one other one. On the 24th, I'd like to have a committee of the whole meeting for a short discussion, so we can set the parameters for our next budget. Basically, so the county board, since there's going to be a majority of us returning, talk about levy, debt, and property tax relief. And we probably can have about a 45-minute to an hour discussion on that for the next meeting, for March 24th. Now Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to give a positive shout out to our IT team here who is manning the cameras and the voting machine. Is back after being trained by John, but tonight we have Bobbin too. So let's give them some applause.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Wish.
everybody be careful going home. There's severe weather running right through us right now. They're talking about large hail and severe thunderstorms, so be careful.
Supervisor Capralian.
Thank you so much. Our next cohort of youth and governance went out, so it'll be soon time to congratulate our new incoming and also give some honors to our outgoing. And with that being said, we have Youth and Governance Representative Anderson here. So who sat through this healthy discussion. So thank you for being here. I just wanted to acknowledge that and also for the clerk to mark it in attendance. Thank you.
And since we acknowledging,
Supervisor Coleman, yep.
thank you. And since we acknowledging, she has an interview coming up for going to Japan. So let's wish her luck in that. So yes, that's my Betsy.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.